Wife called me from Florida. We have an open marriage now. Your opinion doesn't matter. A Marpian doesn't matter. So I simply answered, okay. 1 hour later, her life fell apart. What did I do? The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the microwave clock, watching leftover pasta rotate under the pale yellow light, thinking about how quiet the house had become since Emma left for her girls' trip to Miami. 5 days. That's what she'd said. 5 days of sunshine and mojitos and whatever else women do when they need to find themselves at a beachfront resort. I wasn't suspicious. Not then. Maybe I should have been. Maybe the signs were there all along, written in a language I'd chosen not to learn. But that night, standing in our kitchen in Portland, listening to rain drum against the windows like impatient fingers, I was just a husband, missing his wife. Emma with that photo from our anniversary last year. The one where she's laughing at something I'd said, her hair catching the golden hour light. I smiled reflexively the way you do when someone you love calls unexpectedly. Hey, babe, I answered, pulling the pasta out and burning my finger slightly on the edge of the plate. How's Florida treating you? There was a pause, not the comfortable kind we'd built over 7 years of marriage. This was different. Waited, deliberate. Michael? Her voice came through clear but distant, like she was calling from more than just 1,000 miles away. We need to talk. My stomach dropped in that instinctive way. Your body knows something before your brain catches up. I set the plate down carefully on the counter, suddenly not hungry at all. Okay, I said slowly. What's going on? Are you all right? Another pause. In the background, I could hear music, something with a heavy bass line, the kind that thrums through walls at expensive clubs. Laughter, voices, the clink of glasses. I'm fine, she said. And there was something in her tone I'd never heard before, something bright and sharp and utterly foreign. Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm clear. For the first time in years, I'm clear about what I want. Emma, you're scaring me. What are you talking about? I'm talking about us, Michael. About our marriage. About how I've been feeling trapped and small and invisible for so long, I almost forgot what it feels like to be seen. The words hit like physical things. I grabbed the edge of the counter. Trapped? Emma, what? Where's this coming from? We were fine before you left. We were good. No, her voice cut through. You were fine. You were comfortable. You had your routine and your job and your little life all mapped out. But I was drowning, Michael. Drowning in your contentment. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't real. This was some kind of stress response. Too much sun and alcohol. Maybe food poisoning affecting her judgment. Baby, listen to me. Whatever's going on, we can talk about it. When you get home, we can... I'm not coming home. Not the way you think. Not as the same person. The rain intensified outside, sheets of water now, the kind of storm that makes you grateful for solid walls and warm light. What does that mean? My voice came out quieter than I intended. It means I met someone. She said it simply, casually, like she was telling me she'd tried a new restaurant. The world tilted slightly. I gripped the counter harder. You met someone? His name is Derek. He's a real estate developer. He's successful, confident, ambitious. He makes me feel alive, Michael. He makes me feel like a woman instead of just someone's wife. Each word was a small, precise cut. I wondered distantly if this was what dying felt like. Not all at once, but in increments, piece by piece. So, you're what? Leaving me for someone you met 5 days ago in Florida? It's not about the timeline. Her voice had that edge of impatience now, like I was being deliberately obtuse. It's about the connection. It's about finally feeling what I'm supposed to feel. And I'm not leaving you, exactly, no. I'm changing the terms. Changing the terms, I repeated numbly. We have an open marriage now, she said, and I could hear her taking a breath, steadying herself for impact. That's what I'm calling to tell Yo. I'm exercising my right to explore other connections. You can too if you want. I don't care. But this is happening, Michael. Your opinion doesn't matter. There it was. The words that would replay in my mind for weeks afterward, sharp and clear as crystal. Your opinion doesn't matter. Something strange happened then, something I didn't expect. Instead of rage or tears or the desperate pleading I probably would have predicted, I felt a kind of cold clarity descend, like ice water in my veins, like waking up from a dream you didn't realize you were having. Behind her voice, I heard a man laugh, deep, confident, the kind of laugh that belongs to someone who's never been denied anything. I heard Emma giggle in response. Actually, giggle like a teenager, not the woman who'd promised me forever in a church 7 years ago with tears streaming down her face. Are you there? She asked, that impatience sharper now. Michael, say something. I looked around our kitchen at the coffee maker we'd bought together after debating the features for 3 weeks. At the herb garden on the windowsill she'd started last spring, now slightly wilted from my inexpert watering. At the photo on the refrigerator, us at Mount Hood, her arms around my neck, both of us sunburned and grinning. I thought about the mortgage we just refinanced, the joint account with both our names, the life insurance policies, naming each other as beneficiaries, the investment portfolio we'd carefully built, the business I'd poured my savings into, the one she'd encouraged me to start, the one that was finally starting to turn a real profit. I thought about a lot of things in those few seconds of silence. Okay, I said. What? Okay. You want an open marriage? Okay, that's it. That's all you're going to say. I could hear the disappointment in her voice. She'd wanted a fight. She'd wanted tears and begging and dramatic declarations. She'd wanted me to play the role of the heartbroken husband so she could play the role of the liberated woman breaking free. I wasn't going to give her that. What do you want me to say, Emma? You've made your decision. You've told me my opinion doesn't matter. So, okay, I hear you. I understand. You're in an open marriage now. We're in an open marriage. Sure, whatever you say. Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear her recalibrating. You're being weird, she said finally. Do I? I'm agreeing with you. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted you to care, Michael. I wanted you to show some emotion, something, anything. I laughed then, a short, sharp sound that surprised even me. You wanted me to care about your affair. Even though it's a pain to do with these newer models, I ate my pasta standing at the counter. Every bite, I washed the dish. I dried it. I put it away. Then I walked to my home office, the small room at the end of the hall where I'd spent countless nights building my business, where Emma used to bring me coffee and kiss the top of my head and tell me she was proud of me. I turned on my computer and opened a browser. I didn't search for lawyers, not yet. I searched for something else first, something I'd been casually aware of but never really paid attention to. A detail Emma had mentioned in passing 3 years ago, laughing about how her father's attorney was so paranoid when drafting documents. See, Emma came from money, real money, old Portland family money. Her trust fund alone was worth more than most people make in a lifetime. And when we got married, her father, never quite sold on the English teacher she'd chosen over the investment banker he'd preferred, had insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Emma had been embarrassed about it at the time. She'd apologized, held my hands across our favorite coffee shop table and explained that it was just a formality, just something to make her father feel better, just paperwork that would never matter because we were forever. I'd sign Nandanda without much thought. I wasn't marrying her for money. I loved her for the way she laughed at my terrible jokes and fell asleep reading books with a dozen bookmarks stuck in different pages and sang off-key in the shower. but I'd read it carefully because I'd been raised by an accountant father who taught me to read every word of every document I ever signed. And there, buried in the middle of page 7, section 4, subsection C, was a clause that Emma had probably forgotten about entirely. A clause her father's paranoid attorney had insisted on including a morality clause, specifically a clause stating that in the event of proven infidelity, the offending party would forfeit certain financial protections and claims that the trust fund distributions would be affected, that property division would be weighted toward the faithful spouse. It was aggressive, probably not entirely enforceable in every aspect, but it was there, signed by both of us, notarized and filed. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. Then I opened another tab and began researching Florida law, specifically regarding when an affair might be considered legally relevant. I researched private investigators. I researched the admissibility of phone records and social media evidence. I researched documentation requirements for contested divorces. I worked until 3 a.m. taking notes in a password-protected document, methodical and careful, building a framework, creating a plan. My phone stayed off. The rain eventually stopped. By the time the sun started turning the sky, that particular shade of gray-purple that comes before dawn, I had 12 pages of notes and a very clear understanding of exactly what I needed to do. I didn't kid. I didn't rage. I didn't throw things or drink myself unconscious or do any of the things people do when their world falls apart. The first was to my business partner, Jake, apologizing for the early hour and asking him to handle things for a few days because I had a family emergency. He didn't ask questions, just said he had my back. The second was to Emma's father, Richard. That conversation was brief but illuminating. I didn't tell him about Derek. I simply said Emma and I were having some difficulties and asked very casually if he remembered the details of our prenup, particularly the sections regarding asset protection. His pause told me everything I needed to know. He remembered. The third call was to the best divorce attorney in Portland, someone I'd met at a charity function 2 years ago, someone who'd given me his card and said, half joking, "Hopefully you'll never need me." But everyone should have a good lawyer's number just in case. I left a voicemail requesting a confidential consultation as soon as possible. The fourth call was to a private investigation firm specializing in infidelity documentation. I asked about Florida operations, turnaround time, admissibility of evidence, cost. They could have someone at Emma's hotel by that afternoon. I authorized it. Then I went to the gym because routine is important, because normal is important, because the man I was about to become needed to be calm, collected, and completely in control. I ran 5 miles on the treadmill thinking about nothing but my breathing, my pace, the rhythm of my feet. When I got home, I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls from Emma, 63 text messages ranging from angry to apologetic to confused to furious again. I didn't read them all. I didn't need to. I sent one message back. Received your call, acknowledged your decision, taking some time to process. We'll talk when you return. Professional, distant, and giving nothing away. Her response came within seconds. Call me now. I didn't. Instead, I showered, dressed in my best suit, the charcoal Tom Ford I'd bought for client meetings, and drove to my 10 a.m. consultation with the divorce attorney. Her name was Patricia Goldsmith, and she had the kind of reputation that made other lawyers nervous. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and smiled. "Mr. Chen," she said, "I think we're going to get along very well." That was 1 hour after Emma's call. By the time the sun set on Wednesday, her life, the one she'd so casually blown up with a phone call from Florida, was already beginning to unravel in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. And I hadn't done anything dramatic at all. I just said, "Okay." Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes Portland beautiful. Sun breaking through dissipating clouds, everything washed clean from the previous night's rain. I made coffee in the French press, Emma always said was too much work, scrambled eggs the way my mother taught me, and sat at our dining table reading the newspaper like it was any other day. My phone buzzed constantly. I turned the sound off but left the vibrations on, a small reminder of the storm gathering on the other end. Emma's name flashed across the screen every few minutes, sometimes calls, sometimes messages. I imagined her in Florida, probably hungover, definitely confused, maybe even a little scared by my lack of reaction. Good. Fear was better than certainty. Uncertainty was a tool, and I was learning to wield it. Patricia had been clear during our consultation. The next 72 hours are critical. Don't engage emotionally. Don't give her anything to use against you. Document everything. Say nothing. And for God's sake, don't do anything that could be construed as retaliatory or abusive. You're the wounded party. Act like it, but do it with dignity. So I did. I went to work. I taught my classes at the community college, American literature, 2 sections back to back. We were covering Fitzgerald, which felt cosmically ironic. I stood in front of 23 students and discussed the green light at the end of Daisy's dock, the American dream's corruption, the tragedy of loving someone who doesn't love you back the same way. A girl in the front row, maybe 19, raised her hand. Professor Chen, do you think Gatsby ever realized Daisy wasn't worth it? I paused, chalk hovering over the blackboard. I think, I said carefully, that Gatsby loved an idea more than a person. And by the time he understood the difference, he had already invested everything. The question isn't whether she was worth it. The question is whether he could have ever been happy with the truth. The girl nodded thoughtfully. I moved on to discussing symbolism, but my words echoed in my own head for the rest of the day. Between classes, I checked my email. The private investigator had sent an encrypted message with preliminary findings. I opened it in my office with the door locked. They'd located Emma at the Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, room 1847. The room was registered under Derek Morrison's name. Derek Morrison, 42, CEO of Morrison Development Group, twice divorced, net worth approximately $38 million. The investigator had included photos Emma and Derek at a beachfront restaurant, his hand on her lower back. Emma and Derek in the hotel pool, her legs wrapped around his waist. Emma and Derek entering the hotel room at 2 a.m., clearly intoxicated, his hands in her hair. The photos were time-stamped, location-stamped, professionally documented, admissible. I looked at them with a strange detachment. That woman in the images, laughing, radiant, free, looked like Emma, but felt like a stranger. When had I last seen her laugh like that with me? When had I last made her feel whatever Derek was making her feel? The thought came with a pang of something. Not quite grief, not quite anger, something in between. I closed the laptop. I'd opened a separate account the day before for something Patricia had advised immediately. I didn't clean out our joint account. That would be suspicious, vindictive, exactly the wrong move. But I did transfer my portion of our most recent deposits, my paychecks, carefully documented to show this was my money, my earnings. The bank manager, a woman named Susan, who'd helped us with our mortgage, gave me a concerned look. Everything okay, Michael? Just doing some financial reorganization, I said with a smile that probably didn't reach my eyes. Nothing to worry about. She didn't look convinced, but she processed the transaction. I drove home through traffic, listening to NPR, letting the calm voices of journalists discussing policy minutiae wash over me like white noise. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. The sounds of a world that kept turning regardless of personal catastrophe. At home, I did something I'd been putting off. I went through the house methodically, photographing everything, not out of sentimentality, though there was some of that, but for documentation, Patricia had been explicit. Before she returns, I want photographic evidence of the state of your home, your possessions, everything. If she claims you destroyed property or hid assets, we need proof of the baseline. So I photographed our bedroom with Emma's clothes still in the closet, her jewelry box on the dresser, her books stacked on her nightstand, the living room with our wedding photos still on the mantel, the kitchen with the calendar she'd filled out before leaving, her handwriting marking dental appointments and grocery lists, and a note that said, "Emma's birthday gift. Remember, my birthday was in 3 weeks." I wondered distantly if she'd still be here for it, if we'd still be married, if any of this would be resolved or just beginning. I photographed my office where my business files were kept, the spare bedroom we'd been planning to turn into a nursery someday, still full of storage boxes and exercise equipment we never used, the basement with its water heater and electrical panel and foundation. Boring, practical documentation that lawyers apparently loved. It took 2 hours. By the end, I had over 300 photos backed up to the cloud and an external hard drive. My phone rang. Emma again. This time I answered. Finally, as she snapped, "I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. "I know. I've been busy." "Busy? Michael, we need to talk about this. We need to discuss what's happening." "I thought we already did." "You told me your decision." I said, "Okay, what else is there to discuss?" "Don't do that. Don't be passive-aggressive. If you're angry, be angry, but don't shut me out." I sat down on our couch, the one we'd picked out together at that Scandinavian furniture store, arguing good-naturedly about whether to get the gray or the blue. We'd compromised on gray-blue. "I'm not shutting you out, Emma. I'm respecting your wishes. You wanted an open marriage. You said my opinion doesn't matter, so I'm not giving you one." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Silence on her end. In the background, I could hear ocean waves. She was outside somewhere, maybe on the beach, maybe with Derek. "I meant that I needed you to understand I'm making this choice for myself, not asking for permission. I meant that I'm done being the accommodating wife who sacrifices what she wants for everyone else's comfort." "Okay," I said again. "Stop saying that." "What would you like me to say?" "I want you to fight. I want you to care. I want you to show me that this matters to you." I closed my eyes, took a breath, remembered Patricia's words. "Don't engage emotionally." "Emma, you called me at midnight to tell me you're sleeping with another man and changing the terms of our marriage without my input. You told me explicitly that my opinion doesn't matter. Now you're upset that I'm not fighting you on it. Do you see the contradiction?" "It's not about contradiction. It's about you never fighting for anything for me, for us. You just accept everything. Go with the flow, never push back. Do you know how exhausting that is? How invisible it makes me feel? You're sleeping with someone else and I'm the one making you feel invisible. You don't understand. Help me understand then. Explain to me how your affair is my fault." "It's not an affair." Her voice rose sharp and defensive. "We're in an open marriage now. I told you that." "You told me." "I didn't agree to it. There's a difference." "I don't need your agreement. And that's the whole point." I felt something crack inside my chest, some final restraint giving way. "You're right," I said, my voice perfectly level. "You don't need my agreement. You're a grown woman making grown woman choices, so make them. Do what you want." "But Emma, what?" "Don't call me again unless you're ready to have an actual conversation about what happens next. Not about how you feel or what you need or how I've failed you. About the practical reality of what you've just done to our marriage." "Michael, enjoy the rest of your trip. I'll see you Sunday." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I gripped my knees, breathing deliberately, counting to 10, then 20, then 30. The crack of my chest spread into something larger, something that felt like it might split me open if I let it. I didn't let it. Instead, I called Jake. "Hey man," he answered. "How's the family emergency?" "It's complicated. Listen, I need to ask you something about the business." "Shoot, if I needed to, hypothetically, could we reconfigure the partnership structure, specifically regarding spousal claims on assets?" Jake was quiet for a moment. He was sharp, always had been. We'd started the consulting firm together 3 years ago, Educational Technology Solutions for Schools and Universities. It had been my idea, my expertise in teaching, combined with Jake's software development background. We'd grown from 2 guys in a shared office to a team of 8 with clients in 6 states. "This is about Emma," he said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. She cheating?" I didn't answer directly. "Our personal situation is changing. I need to protect the business, protect your investment too. She was never involved in operations, never contributed financially, but on paper, she could claim it's marital property." "Yeah, I get it," he sighed. "Michael, I'm sorry, man. I really am. But yes, we can restructure. I'll call our lawyer tomorrow. We'll make sure your work, your investment stays yours. Whatever you need." "Thanks, Jake. That's what partners are for." "You want to grab a beer this weekend? Talk it through?" "Maybe. I'll let you know." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of our living room and thought about protection, about walls and moats and drawbridges, about how quickly you have to learn to defend territory you never thought would be contested. Friday, I met with Patricia again. She'd reviewed the preliminary investigation report and the prenuptial agreement with what I can only describe as professional glee. "This is good," she said, spreading documents across her desk. "This is very, very good. The morality clause is solid. Her father's attorney knew what he was doing. And with documented proof of infidelity in a state where fault still matters for some aspects of divorce proceedings, we have leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For everything. Property division, spousal support, which you won't need, but she might claim she does, division of business assets, and, most importantly, enforcement of the trust fund clauses. Her father structured that trust carefully. If she's in violation of the behavioral conditions and infidelity is explicitly mentioned, there are consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind where her monthly distributions get suspended, where the trustees have grounds to withhold funds pending a review, where her access to the principal becomes contingent on meeting certain conditions, including maintaining the sanctity of her marriage." I stared at her. Her father really didn't trust her. Her father really didn't trust anyone. And right now, that paranoia is your best friend. Patricia leaned forward, her expression serious. "Here's what I need you to understand, Michael. Your wife thinks she's calling the shots. She thinks she can have her marriage and her affair and her trust fund and her comfortable life all at once. She thinks she'll roll over because that's what you've always done. Am I right about that?" I thought about the hundreds of small compromises over 7 years. Her career choices prioritized over mine, her friends, her family gatherings, her preferences for how we spent weekends and holidays and money. Me always accommodating, always flexible, always believing that making her happy was the same as being happy myself. "Yeah," I said, "you're right. Then we're going to teach her a very expensive lesson about assumptions. But only if you're ready for this. Only if you're absolutely certain this marriage is over. Because once we start down this path, there's no coming back. The trust fund issue alone, once the trustees know, once her father knows, once this becomes official, it's nuclear. Do you understand?" I thought about Emma in Miami, in Derek's arms, laughing. I thought about her voice on the phone. "Your opinion doesn't matter. I understand." I said, "Do it." Patricia smiled. Not kindly, not crewy, professionally. "Then let's begin." That afternoon, formal letters went out. One to the trust administrators, carefully worded, citing sections of the trust documents and requesting a formal review based on potential behavioral violations. One to Emma's father, even more carefully worded, expressing my deep regret at having to inform him of concerning developments regarding his daughter's conduct. One to our joint financial institutions, putting them on notice that the accounts might be subject to legal proceedings and requesting detailed transaction histories. I didn't send anything to Emma. Not yet. Let her figure it out when the dominoes started falling. Saturday, I cleaned the house. All of it. Deep cleaned, scrubbed floors, and organized closets, and wiped down surfaces until everything gleamed. When Patricia said to document the home's condition, I wanted it perfect. Wanted photographic evidence that I'd maintained our life, our space, our shared responsibilities. Even while Emma was in Florida, destroying our marriage, the physical labor felt good, meditative. Each task completed was a small victory, a tiny piece of order imposed on chaos. Sunday morning, Emma's flight was scheduled to land at 2 p.m. I knew because I checked her email. We had always shared passwords, another intimacy that now felt like intelligence gathering. She hadn't changed them. Probably hadn't thought she needed to. I prepared carefully, showered, dressed in casual clothes, jeans, and a button-down. Nothing aggressive, nothing defensive. I made lunch, set the table, put fresh flowers in a vase because that's what I always did. Normal. Everything had to look normal. At 3:15, I heard her car in the driveway. The engine shut off, a pause. Maybe she was gathering courage. Maybe checking her makeup. Maybe texting Derek one last time. The front door opened. Michael. Her voice sounded uncertain, small, not at all like the woman who'd called me from Florida with such certainty. In the kitchen, I called back. She appeared in the doorway, willing her suitcase, still wearing sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. Her skin was tan, her hair lighter, sun-kissed. She looked beautiful and guilty and scared. Hi, she said. Hi, how was your flight? It was fine, Michael. We need to talk. I know. I made lunch. Are you hungry? She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Lunch? Seriously? You just got back. You're probably tired. We should eat something before we have difficult conversations. I don't want lunch. I want to know why my father called me this morning, why the trust administrators left me a voicemail, why our bank sent me a weird email. What the hell did you do? I gestured to the table. Sit down, Emma. I don't want to sit down. Then stand. But I'm going to eat because I'm hungry and we're going to talk like adults. I sat, served myself salad, took a bite, chewed slowly. She watched me like I'd grown a second head. Finally, she sat. Start talking, she said. I put my fork down, looked at her directly, saw the woman I'd married somewhere under the tan and the defensiveness and the fear. You called me Tuesday night and told me you were having an affair. You told me we had an open marriage now. You told me my opinion didn't matter. Do you remember saying that? I remember. But I said, okay. I respected your choice. I gave you exactly what you asked for. No fighting, no drama, no attempts to control you. I let you have your freedom. Then why is everyone calling me? Why is my father? Because freedom has consequences, Emma. Because actions have implications beyond just feelings. You didn't just declare an open marriage. You committed adultery. Documented, provable adultery. And according to the prenuptial agreement you signed, the one your father's paranoid lawyer wrote that has very specific ramifications. The color drained from her face. You're divorcing me. I'm protecting myself, which is what you should have expected me to do. Michael, wait, please. I didn't mean for this to... I wasn't thinking clearly. Derek is just... It was just supposed to be fun. It didn't mean anything. I picked my fork back up, took another bite of salad. Emma, I'm going to give you the same respect you gave me. I'm going to tell you what's happening, and your opinion doesn't matter." She started crying then. Real tears, not manipulation. Fear and regret, and the dawning understanding that her beautiful, liberated moment in Florida had cost her everything. And I sat there eating lunch, feeling nothing but the cold, clear certainty that I'd made exactly the right choice. Emma's tears fell onto our dining table, darkening the wood in small, spreading circles. I watched them with the detached interest of someone observing a natural phenomenon. Rain on a windshield, coffee spilling, the inevitable consequence of gravity and liquid. She'd always been a beautiful crier. Even now, with mascara tracking down her cheeks and her breath coming in stuttered gasps, she looked like something from a film. Tragic and luminous and completely unaware of how calculated it appeared. Or maybe I was just too tired to see it as anything but performance. "Michael, please," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, let's just talk about this. I made a mistake. I know I did, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can fix it." I set my fork down carefully, aligned it with the edge of my plate. "Emma, what exactly do you think there is to fix? Our marriage, us. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose everything we've built. You didn't want to lose it Tuesday night. You were very clear about what you wanted. Freedom, Derek. An open marriage where my opinion didn't matter. I was angry. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking clearly enough to call me at midnight, clearly enough to articulate exactly what you wanted, clearly enough to spend the next 4 days with him while ignoring my calls until you got curious about why I wasn't falling apart." She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, a short bark of sound that surprised us both. "You want to talk about fair? Okay, let's talk about fair." I stood, walked to my office, and returned with a folder, the one Patricia had prepared. The one I'd been carrying in my bag all weekend like a talisman. I set it on the table between us. "What is that?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Receipts." I opened the folder. The first page was a timeline printed in neat columns. Dates, Damon saying locations, activities, Tuesday through Saturday, every meal at expensive restaurants charged to Derek's credit card. Every cocktail, every Uber, every moment documented by the private investigator who'd followed them like a shadow. Emma's face went white. "You had me followed. You had an affair." I documented it. That's what happens when you blow up a marriage with a morality clause in the prenup. The second page was photographs, not the intimate ones. I'd kept those back. Didn't need to be cruel about it, but enough. Emma and Derek on the beach at dinner in the hotel lobby, his hand on her back, her face tilted up toward his, both of them looking like people without a care in the world. "You didn't," she whispered. "I did. And before you tell me this is an invasion of privacy or somehow wrong, let me remind you, you were in public. You weren't hiding. You thought you had permission because you declared it so. But Emma, that's not how marriage works. That's not how contracts work. And that's definitely not how prenuptial agreements work." I flipped to the third page, the relevant section of our prenup highlighted in yellow. Section 4, subsection C. I read aloud. "In the event that either party engages in extramarital relations during the marriage, as proven by clear and convincing evidence, said party shall forfeit certain financial protections outlined in this agreement, including but not limited to claims on separately held assets, trust fund distributions subject to behavioral conditions, and preferential property division considerations." Emma was shaking her head. "My father wouldn't enforce that. He wouldn't cut me off over this. Your father already knows." The silence that followed was profound. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, a car passing outside, Emma's breathing quick and shallow. "You told him." "I informed him, yes, as was my obligation under the trust documents." The behavioral conditions in your trust aren't suggestions, Emma. They're requirements. And infidelity is explicitly listed as a violation. Your father's lawyer made sure of that when you were 23 and he was setting up your financial future. He'll forgive me once I explain. Explain what? That you fell in love with a real estate developer in Miami? That you were feeling trapped and small? That your husband of 7 years wasn't exciting enough anymore? My voice had risen without me intending. I stopped, breathed, found that call center again. Your father's already spoken to the trust administrators. I continued more quietly. There's going to be a formal review. Your distributions are suspended pending the outcome. That's not my doing, Emma. That's the consequence of your choices hitting the legal framework your father built specifically to protect you from your own impulses. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This isn't Hene. You're being vindictive. You're trying to destroy me. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. By taking away my money, by ruining my relationship with my father, by humiliating me. You humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure I don't go down with you. Emma paced to the window, her arms wrapped around herself. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. The tears had stopped. Fine. You want to play it this way? We'll play it this way. I'll get my own lawyer. I'll fight this. That prenup won't hold up. I was 23 when I signed it, barely out of college. I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. You had your own lawyer review it. That's documented too. You took 3 weeks to consider it. You asked questions, got answers, and signed it voluntarily. I signed it because I loved you, and my father was pressuring me, and I wanted to get married. That's duress. I almost laughed. Almost. Good luck proving that 7 years later when you're the one who violated its terms, not me. She turned back to face me, and for the first time since she'd walked through the door, I saw something other than fear or regret. I saw anger. Real, burning anger. You're enjoying this, she said. You're actually enjoying watching me fall apart. I'm not enjoying anything, Emma. I'm surviving. There's a difference. No, you're punishing me because I finally had the courage to want something for myself. Because I finally stopped making you the center of my universe. You're punishing me. Something in me snapped then. Not loudly, not obviously, but definitively. I stood up, walked to where she was standing, looked at her directly, close enough to see the flecks of green in her brown eyes, the freckle on her left cheekbone. I used to kiss every morning. You want to know what I'm doing, Emma? I'm holding you accountable. For the first time in our marriage, I'm not accommodating you. I'm not smoothing things over. I'm not making your bad decisions comfortable for you. You made a choice, a big one, a marriage-ending one, and now you get to live with it. It doesn't have to end the marriage. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We can. There is no we anymore. You ended that Tuesday night. What we're negotiating now is how the dissolution happens, whether it's amicable or ugly, whether you walk away with some dignity, or whether this becomes the kind of divorce people talk about at dinner parties for years. Her face crumpled again, but this time it felt more real, less performance, more genuine devastation. I love you, she whispered. You loved me Tuesday morning, too. Then you met Derek and loved him more by Tuesday night. That's not love, Emma. That's convenience. That's not true. Derek was just excitement, new and different. And you prioritized that excitement over 7 years of commitment, over vows, over me. I heard you, Emma. I heard what you said. Your opinion doesn't matter. Those were your words. So here's what my opinion is worth now. Nothing to you. Everything to me. I walked back to the table, closed the folder, tucked it under my arm. You have 2 choices, I said. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, you acknowledge the infidelity. We file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences with the prenup's terms fully enforced. You work with your father and the trust administrators to mitigate the damage to your financial situation, and we both move on with minimal additional pain. And the hard way is you fight me. You contest everything. You claim duress or fraud or whatever your lawyer suggests. And I release all of this. I tap the folder as evidence. Every photo, every timeline, every documented moment of your affair. It becomes public record. Your father sees it. Your friends see it. The trust administrators see it. And you lose anyway. But you lose publicly and expensively. Emma sank back into her chair. She looked smaller somehow, younger, like the girl she'd been when we met in that coffee shop 9 years ago. The one who'd been reading Sylvia Plath and crying quietly over a passage she wouldn't explain. "When did you become this person?" she asked softly. "Tuesday night at 11:47 p.m. when you told me my opinion didn't matter." "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it then? Explain it to me. Make me understand how telling your husband his feelings are irrelevant about you sleeping with another man is anything other than exactly what it sounds like." She couldn't. She opened her mouth several times, started sentences she couldn't finish, looked at me with something that might have been understanding or might have been just exhaustion. "I don't know," she finally said. "I don't know what I meant. I was angry about things I couldn't even name, about feeling invisible and small and like I was disappearing into our routine. Derek made me feel seen. I saw you every day for 7 years. No, you saw the version of me that fit into our life. The accommodating wife who made dinner and remembered your dental appointments and smiled at your colleagues at faculty parties. You never asked who I was underneath all that. You never told me there was anyone else to ask about. You seemed happy. I was good at seeming happy. Too good. So good I believed it myself until I didn't anymore. We stood there in our dining room with lunch getting cold on the table and documents full of her betrayal in a folder under my arm. And for a moment, I almost felt something like sympathy. Almost. "Emma," I said, "I'm sorry you were unhappy. Genuinely, I'm sorry if I missed signs or didn't ask the right questions or created a life that felt suffocating to you. But you know what you do when you're unhappy in a marriage? You talk about it. You go to counseling. You say, 'Michael, we need to change things.' You don't fly to Florida and someone else and then call your husband to inform him his opinion about it doesn't matter." She flinched at the profanity. I never cursed, not around her. It was one of those things she'd always said she loved about me, that I was gentle, measured, careful with words. I wasn't feeling gentle anymore. "I need you to leave," I said. "What?" "Pack a bag. Go stay with your sister or your parents or get a hotel. I don't care, but you can't stay here tonight. I can't." My voice caught the first crack in my composure. "I can't look at you right now and not see the photos. I can't sleep in our bed knowing where you were, what you were doing, who you were with. So you need to leave. This is my house too. Actually, according to the deed, it's my house. You're on the mortgage. Among it, but the down payment came from my inheritance when my mother died. Another thing your father's lawyer made sure was documented properly. The house is mine, Emma, just like the business is mine. Just like most of what we built in mind because you were too busy being funded by your trust to actually contribute financially. That's not fair. I contributed in other ways. I know you did. And in a different kind of divorce, that would matter. But you signed a prenup that makes financial contribution the measuring stick. Your father's lawyer, remember? Protecting his daughter from gold diggers. Turns out it protects me too. Emma stood slowly like someone much older than 32. You really have this all figured out, don't you? I've had 5 days. You'd be surprised how much you can figure out when you're motivated. She walked toward the stairs, then stopped. Michael, yeah. Did you ever really love me, or was I just convenient, too? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. I loved you so much, I would have forgiven almost anything, I said quietly. But you didn't ask for forgiveness. You asked for permission after the fact and told me my feelings about it were irrelevant. So yeah, Emma, I really loved you. Past tense. Grieve it if you want. I am. She went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, the closet door sliding, the sounds of someone hurriedly packing. 15 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase and her toiletry bag. At the door, she paused one more time. Derek called it off. She said last night, his lawyer advised him to distance himself from a married woman with a complicated financial situation. Apparently, someone told his ex-wife about me. She's threatening to use it in their custody dispute. I said nothing. That was you too, wasn't it? His ex-wife's lawyer contacted me asking if the rumors about her ex-husband's affair with a married woman were true. I confirmed them with evidence. Emma's laugh was bitter. You really did think of everything. I thought of protecting myself, and everything else was just dominoes falling. She left then, the door closing behind her with a soft click. I stood in the entryway for a long time, listening to her car start, listening to it pull away, listening to the silence that filled the house in her absence. Then I walked to the kitchen, dumped the uneaten lunch in the trash, and called Patricia. She's gone. I told her, what's next? Now, Patricia said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Now we negotiate. And Mr. Chen, we negotiate from a position of absolute strength. I hung up and looked around our empty house. Our empty house that was apparently just my house now. The silence felt like both a victory and a wound. I couldn't tell which one hurt more. Monday morning came with fog so thick it turned the world into a watercolor painting, all soft edges and muted colors. Everything familiar made strange. I drove to work through streets I'd navigated 1,000 times, barely seeing them. My mind running through conversations that hadn't happened yet, arguments I needed to prepare for, defenses I needed to build. My phone had been quiet since Emma left Sunday afternoon. No calls, no texts, just silence, which somehow felt louder than her earlier desperation. Jake was waiting in my office when I arrived. 2 cups of coffee from the good place downtown. The one that charged $7, but made it worth it. Figured you could use this, he said, pushing one across my desk. You're a saint. I'm a guy who knows when his business partner needs caffeine and solidarity. He settled into the chair across from me. You want to talk about it? Not really. You going to anyway? I took a long drink of coffee. It was perfect. Dark, slightly bitter, exactly what I needed. She came home yesterday. It went about as well as expected. Meaning she cried. I showed her the evidence. She threatened to fight it. I explained why that would be stupid. And she left. Jake whistled low. Jesus, Michael, you really went nuclear. She went nuclear first. I just had better aim. Fair enough. He paused, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You doing okay? And I mean actually okay, not the tough guy handling it okay you're projecting right now. I set my coffee down, stared at it, watched steam curl upward and disappear. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I'm watching someone else's life, like I'm a character in a story I didn't write and don't know the ending to. Is that okay? Does that count as okay? It counts as normal. You're in shock. You're in crisis mode. The feelings come later, usually when you least expect them. You sound like you're speaking from experience. My sister went through a divorce 3 years ago. Ugly one. Her husband was sleeping with her best friend. She didn't cry for 2 months. Just handled everything with this scary calm. Then one day she was at the grocery store, saw their wedding cake flavor as a sample, and lost it completely. Had a breakdown in the frozen foods aisle. What flavor? Lemon raspberry, which is important because now I can never eat lemon raspberry anything without thinking about my sister sobbing next to the frozen peas. I laughed despite myself. Thanks for that image. Point is, however you're feeling right now is fine, and however you feel later is fine too. There's no right way to have your world fall apart. My computer chimed. Email. I glanced at it reflexively, then froze. The sender was Richard Peaton, Emma's father. I said, "What?" I turned the screen so Jake could see. He leaned forward, squinted at it. "That's your father-in-law?" "Yeah." "Are you going to open it?" I didn't want to. Wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it. Go back to the simpler problem of just divorcing Emma without having to navigate her family's disappointment and judgment. And I opened it. "Michael, I received your letter regarding Emma's conduct. I've also spoken with her. As I'm sure you can imagine, this is a deeply unfortunate situation for everyone involved. I want you to know that I don't hold you responsible for the dissolution of your marriage. Emma has always been impulsive, passionate, prone to making decisions with her heart rather than her head. I'd hoped that marriage would settle her. Clearly, I was wrong. The trust administrators are proceeding with their review as required by the terms of the trust. I cannot and will not interfere with that process regardless of my personal feelings. The rules exist for a reason. However, I would like to meet with you this week, not as Emma's father, but as someone who has known you for nearly a decade and respects the man you've proven yourself to be. There are aspects of the situation we should discuss in person, away from lawyers and formal proceedings. Please let me know your availability. Regards, Richard." I read it 3 times. Jake waited patiently, sipping his coffee. "He wants to meet," I said finally. "Is that good or bad?" I have no idea, but I forwarded the email to Patricia with a note. "Thoughts?" Her response came within 5 minutes. "Meet with him. Neutral location. Tell me when and where. I'll brief you on what to say and what not to say. This could be very advantageous." I looked at Jake. "Apparently, I'm having lunch with my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law. That sounds like a special kind of hell. You have no idea." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of teaching and administrative tasks that felt simultaneously vital and completely meaningless. I stood in front of students discussing Hemingway's iceberg theory, the idea that the deeper meaning of a story should not be evident on the surface, but should shine through implicitly, and wondered if my own life had become an iceberg. All these hidden depths no one could see. Everything important happening below the waterline. A student, Daniel, sharp kid, usually insightful, raised his hand. "Professor Chen, do you think Hemingway was writing from personal experience? Like when he talks about loss and pain and all that subtext stuff?" "Almost certainly," I said. Hemingway's best work came from his own wounds. He believed you had to be hurt to write anything true, that suffering was the price of authenticity. "That seems kind of messed up," Daniel said. "Like, what if you haven't suffered enough? Are you just screwed as a writer?" I think Hemingway would say you should live more, take more risks, expose yourself to experiences that challenge you. But I paused, thinking about the past 5 days, about Emma's phone call and the photographs and the way my entire life had restructured itself around a single moment of betrayal. But I think he was wrong about that, or at least incomplete. Suffering might teach you things, but it doesn't make you wise. What makes you wise is what you do with the suffering, how you metabolize it, whether you let it destroy you or transform you. The class was quiet. Daniel nodded slowly. "Which one are you?" he asked. "I'm sorry. Which one are you? Destroyed or transformed?" It was an inappropriate question, too personal, crossed about 7 lines of professional boundary. I should have redirected, made a joke, moved on to the next topic. Instead, I said, "I'll let you know when I figure it out." Lunchtime, I met Richard at a restaurant downtown. High-end, quiet. The kind of place where business deals and difficult conversations happen over white tablecloths and overpriced wine. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking older than I remembered. Emma had his eyes, his high cheekbones, his way of holding himself like the world owed him attention. "Michael," he stood, shook my hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "Thank you for meeting me." Of course, we sat, ordered, made small talk about traffic and weather and nothing until the waiter left and we were alone with our water glasses and the weight of everything unsaid. Richard spoke first. "I owe you an apology." I blinked. "I'm sorry. When Emma brought you home 9 years ago, I didn't approve. You were a teacher. No offense intended, but you weren't. You didn't fit what I'd imagined for her. I thought she was rebelling, acting out, trying to prove something to me. So I pushed for that prenuptial agreement harder than I might have otherwise. Made it more aggressive than was probably necessary. The morality clause. Among other things, yes, I wanted to protect her, and honestly, I wanted to protect our family's assets from what I assumed was an opportunistic marriage. He paused, took a drink of water. "I was wrong about you. You've been good to her. Good for her. You built something substantial on your own. That business of yours is impressive. You didn't need her money. You married her because you loved her." "I did," I said. Past tense. "I understand. I would feel the same way." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Emma called me yesterday after she left your house. She was distraught, angry, confused. She alternated between blaming you for being vindictive and blaming herself for being stupid. Which one did you agree with?" "Both?" "Neither. Michael, my daughter, has always been brilliant and impulsive in equal measure. She feels things so intensely, she sometimes forgets other people feel things too. This situation, Derek, Florida, the phone call, it's classic Emma. She wanted something, she took it, and she didn't consider the consequences until they were already in motion. That's not an excuse. I'm not offering one. I'm offering context and an acknowledgement that the prenuptial agreement I insisted on, which is now being used against her, is at least partially my fault. I created the weapon you're wielding." Our food arrived. We both ignored it. "What do you want from me, Richard?" "I want to understand your intentions. Are you divorcing Emma because the marriage is over? Or are you divorcing her to punish her?" It was a fair question, one I've been asking myself at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come and the house was too quiet. "Both," I said honestly. "The marriage is over. The second she told me my opinion didn't matter, the second she decided our vows were negotiable without my input, it was over. But yeah, there's punishment in it too. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, that she can't just blow up people's hands and expect them to smile and accommodate her." Richard nodded slowly. "And the trust fund, the suspension of her distributions, that's not me. That's the trust administrators following the rules you established. But you triggered the review. I documented what happened and reported it as required. Emma violated the terms. What happens next is between her and the trustees. She's going to lose access to a significant amount of money. Money she's used to having. Money she's never had to live without. And she'll learn to live without it. Or she'll meet the conditions for restoration. That's up to her. It could take years. The trust document requires proof of rehabilitation, professional counseling, a waiting period. She could be functionally cut off until she's 35. I picked up my fork, cut into my salmon, took a bite. It was good, perfectly cooked. I chewed slowly, swallowed, then looked Richard directly in the eye. You wrote those rules, not me. If you think they're too harsh, that's something you need to reconcile with yourself. I'm just living with the reality your daughter created. You're a hard man, Michael. No, I'm a man who got tired of being soft. We ate in silence for several minutes. The restaurant hummed with low conversation around us. Other people having other difficult discussions, the world continuing its complicated rotation. I have a proposition, Richard said finally. I'm listening. The prenuptial agreement is enforceable. Yes, but there are aspects that could be negotiated. The property division, for instance, the business assets. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement that would expedite the divorce, minimize the public aspects of the proceedings, and allow Emma to maintain some financial dignity in exchange for your agreement to support Emma's petition to the trust administrators to testify on her behalf that the infidelity was a one-time mistake, a moment of poor judgment rather than a pattern of behavior, to help her get access to her funds restored more quickly. I set my fork down, stared at him. You want me to help her? I want you to be merciful. She wasn't merciful to me. She was thoughtless and selfish and cruel, all of which is true. But Michael, she's still my daughter. And whatever she did to you, watching her suffer, truly suffer, financially and emotionally, is harder than I anticipated. So you want me to fix it? I want you to consider that you've made your point. You've taught her the lesson. You've held her accountable. Now I'm asking you to choose whether you want to be the man who destroyed her completely or the man who walked away with his dignity intact and let her rebuild her life. I thought about Emma crying in our dining room, about her voice saying, "When and did you become this person?" About the way she looked small and scared and finally understanding what she'd done. I thought about the past 5 years, the good parts, the times before resentment and routine had calcified into something that looked like love but felt like obligation. I thought about who I wanted to be when this was over. I'll think about it, I said. Richard nodded. That's all I can ask. We finished lunch. He paid. We shook hands in the parking lot. Two men who'd been family and now weren't, navigating the strange territory between connection and severance. In my car, I sat for a long time before starting the engine. My phone buzzed. Emma. My dad said, "You met with him. Did you agree to help me?" I stared at the message, at the hope implicit in the question, at the assumption that I would, that I should, that mercy was owed rather than earned. I typed back. I said I'd think about it. That's not the same as yes. Her response came immediately. What more do you want from me? I've apologized. I've begged. I've lost everything. How much more do I have to suffer before you're satisfied? I looked out at the parking lot at people walking to their cars with their lunches and their normal problems and their lives that weren't falling apart in real time. Then I wrote, I don't know, Emma. How much suffering did you think I deserved when you called me from Florida? I didn't wait for her response. I turned off my phone, started my car, and drove back to campus. Patricia called that evening with news. Emma's hired a lawyer, Marcus Sullivan. He's good, expensive, aggressive. So we're in for a fight. Looks that way. Unless you accept Richard's offer, which, for the record, is generous. More generous than you'd likely get if we went to court. You think I should take it? I think you should consider what you actually want out of this, Michael. Do you want to win, or do you want to be right? Because sometimes those are different things. I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights, at the life continuing everywhere around my small, contained crisis. I want her to understand, I said. I want her to really, truly understand what she did. She understands. She's losing her trust fund, her marriage, and her self-image as a good person all at once. She understands. Then why doesn't it feel like enough? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Because pain rarely does. Because revenge is supposed to feel satisfying, but mostly just feels empty because you're not actually a vindictive person, Michael. And this whole thing is forcing you to act like one, which is making you uncomfortable. So what do? You decide what kind of man you want to be when this is over, and you make choices that let you live with yourself. After we hung up, I opened my laptop, started writing. Not notes for the divorce, not strategy documents, just writing, stream of consciousness. Everything I was feeling, everything I couldn't say out loud, everything that was happening beneath the surface while I maintained my calm exterior. I wrote about Emma, about love and betrayal, about the strange arithmetic of marriage where everything you build together can be divided in ways that make both people feel robbed. I wrote about myself, about accommodation and resentment, about how you can lose yourself by inches so gradually you don't notice until someone holds up a mirror and you don't recognize your reflection. I wrote until my hands hurt and my eyes burned and the sky started lightening toward dawn. And somewhere in all those words, I found something that felt like clarity. Emma had asked when I became this person, cold, calculating, ruthless. The answer was, I'd always been this person. I just never needed to be him before. The question was whether this was who I wanted to stay. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in Patricia's office watching her review documents with the precision of a surgeon examining x-rays. Outside her window, Portland's skyline cut sharp angles against a cloudless sky. One of those rare crystalline days that makes you remember why people move here despite the rain. Sullivan sent over his initial response, she said, sliding a stack of papers across her desk. It's ambitious. I picked up the document, flipped through it. Legal language, dense as fog, but the intent was clear enough. Emma wanted to contest the prenup's enforceability, claim emotional distress, argue for a 50-50 split of all marital assets, including my business, and petition for spousal support during the proceedings. She's asking for spousal support with a trust fund, a suspended trust fund. Technically, she has no income right now. Sullivan's arguing she's become accustomed to a certain lifestyle and shouldn't be forced into poverty while the divorce proceeds. Poverty. She's staying at her parents' estate where she has no access to her own funds. From a certain angle, it's not entirely unreasonable. Patricia leaned back in her chair. He's doing his job, throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Most of this won't survive scrutiny, but it'll drag things out, make everything more expensive and exhausting for everyone involved. That's the point, isn't it? Exhaust me into accepting a worse deal. Partially. Also, Sullivan genuinely believes he can get the prenup overturned. He's wrong, but he's experienced enough to make the attempt painful. I set the papers down. My coffee had gone cold in its cup, a thin film forming on the surface. Outside, a bird landed on Patricia's window ledge, pecked at something invisible, flew away. Richard's offer is still on the table, Patricia said carefully. You walk away with the house, your business fully protected, no spousal support obligations, and a clean break. In exchange, you provide a statement supporting Emma's trust fund restoration, essentially saying she's sorry and won't do it again. Essentially saying the infidelity was an isolated incident and you believe she's capable of meeting the trust behavioral standards going forward. You don't have to lie, just frame things charitably. And if I don't, then we fight. It'll take 18 months, maybe 2 years. It'll cost you 6 figures in legal fees, probably more. Emma will fight every inch because she has nothing to lose. Her father will fund her legal costs. You'll win most of what matters, but you'll lose time, energy, peace of mind, and at the end of it all, my mom Mo will still be cut off from her trust until she meets the restoration requirements on her own, which could take 5 years or more. So I win, but everyone suffers. Welcome to divorce litigation. I stood, walked to the window, looked down at the street below. People crossing at the light, carrying coffee, briefcases, shopping bags. living their lives, completely unaware they were being observed by someone whose entire world had restructured itself around betrayal and consequence. "What would you do?" I asked. "If you were me?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Professionally, I'd tell you to take Richard's offer. It's the smart play. Financially sound, emotionally clean, lets you move on with minimal scarring. And personally, I'd probably burn it all down out of spite, but I've been divorced twice, so my judgment on these matters is questionable." I laughed to spite myself. Turned back to face her. "I need to talk to Emma. That's a terrible idea, probably, but I need to do it anyway. Michael, anything you say to her can and will be used against you. Sullivan will twist every word. If you want to communicate, do it through me. I'm not going to negotiate with her. I'm going to tell her something. One conversation, then we proceed however we proceed." Patricia studied me with the expression of someone trying to decide if their client was being wise or self-destructive. One conversation. She finally said, "Neutral location during daylight hours. You tell me when and where beforehand. And Michael, don't make any promises you can't keep." I texted Emma from the parking lot. "Can we talk? Just us. No lawyers." Her response came within seconds. "When?" "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the coffee shop where we met." A longer pause this time then. "Okay." I drove home through afternoon traffic, my mind already rehearsing what I needed to say, how to say it. The house felt different now. Still mine, technically, always mine, but haunted by absence. Emma's things were mostly gone, taken that first Sunday or collected during the week while I was at work. What remained were the shared things. Furniture we'd picked out together, books on shelves with both our marginalia. The life we'd built rendered in objects nobody wanted to divide. That evening, Jake came over with pizza and beer. Owen, we sat in my living room watching a basketball game neither of us cared about, finding comfort in the mundane ritual of it. "You're meeting with her," he said during a commercial break. It wasn't a question. "How'd you know?" "You've got that look. The one people get when they're about to do something either really brave or really stupid." "Can it be both?" "Usually is." He took a drink of beer. "You know what you're going to say?" "Not really. I know what I need to say, but I don't know how to say it without sounding like a pushover. Maybe you just say it honest. No performance, no strategy, just truth." "When did you become a therapist?" "When my business partner started going through a divorce and I realized I couldn't just talk about sports and weather anymore." He gestured at the TV with his beer bottle. "This is us pretending everything's normal. But you need someone to tell you it's okay to not have everything figured out. So here I am. Consider yourself told." "Thanks, man. Anytime. That's what partners do." We watched the game, ate pizza, drank beer, pretended we cared about the score. It was exactly what I needed. Thursday arrived with rain. Of course, rain because Portland couldn't help itself. I taught my morning classes in a fog of anticipation and anxiety. Probably did a terrible job of it. Barely remembered what I'd said by the time I walked out of the lecture hall. At 1:45, I drove to the coffee shop, the same one where Emma and I had met 9 years ago. She'd been sitting in the corner reading Pla, crying quietly. I'd bought her a coffee and asked if she was okay. She'd looked up at me with those devastating eyes and said, "I don't know. Am I?" It had been romantic then, felt like fate. Now it just felt like the universe had a twisted sense of narrative symmetry. Emma was already there when I arrived, sitting at the same corner table. No book this time, no tears, just her, wearing jeans and the sweater I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago, looking nervous and hopeful and scared. I ordered coffee, sat down across from her. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi, thanks for agreeing to meet." I'm the one who asked. "I know," but she twisted her hands together. "I wasn't sure you would actually show up." We sat in awkward silence around us. The coffee shop hummed with afternoon energy. Students studying, people on laptops, the espresso machine hissing and gurgling. Normal life happening while we navigated the aftermath of destroyed promises. I've been thinking. I started, then stopped, started again. I've been thinking about what you asked me when you said, "When did you become this person?" And I've been thinking about who I was before, who we both were. Emma watched me, her hands still now, completely focused. "I accommodated you," I continued. "For 7 years, I accommodated you. Your career came first, your friends, your family, your preferences for how we spent our time and money and energy. I told myself that was love, that making you happy was the same as being happy myself, and maybe for a while it was. But somewhere along the way, I started disappearing, started becoming less Michael and more just Emma's husband, the guy who smiled and agreed and never pushed back." "Michael, let me finish, please." She nodded. "You felt invisible in our marriage. I believe that. I believe you felt trapped and small and like you were disappearing into routine. But Emma, I felt that way too. I just didn't realize it until you called me from Florida and I heard you laugh with Derek in the background and suddenly understood I'd been performing for an audience that stopped watching years ago." Her eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. "The past week," I said, "I've been someone else, someone cold and calculating and strategic. I documented your affair. I triggered the trust review. I protected my assets. I did everything Patricia told me to do to maximize my position and minimize yours. And I told myself it was justice, accountability, teaching you a lesson about consequences." "It was all those things," Emma whispered. "Maybe, but it was also revenge. And Emma, revenge doesn't feel the way I thought it would. It feels empty, exhausting, like I'm spending all this energy on destroying something that's already dead instead of building something new." I took a breath. The coffee shop sounds seemed suddenly louder. Conversations, laughter, the clink of ceramic mugs. "Your father made me an offer. I support your trust restoration, and in exchange, the divorce happens quickly and cleanly. Patricia says I should take it, that it's the smart play." Emma leaned forward slightly, hope flickering across her face. "I'm not going to take it," I said. The hope died. She sat back. "But I'm not going to fight you, either. Not the way Sullivan wants to fight. Not dragging this out for years, making everything public and ugly and devastating. We're going to do this differently." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to honor the prenup as written. You violated the morality clause, so the financial divisions favor me. That's not negotiable. But Emma, I'm not going to fight you on reasonable requests. You want some of the furniture? Take it. You want your grandmother's china? That's technically marital property. It's yours. You need time to figure out your finances before we finalize everything. I'll agree to a reasonable timeline." "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want to become the person I've been this past week. Because being right isn't the same as being whole. Because somewhere under all this anger and hurt, I still remember loving you. And the man who loved you wouldn't want to destroy you, even if you deserve it." Emma was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. But I continued. "I'm not helping you with the trust that's between you and your father and the administrators. You made your choices. You deal with those consequences on your own. I'll be fair in the divorce, but I won't rescue you from the life you chose." "Michael, I'm so sorry. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. I know. So sorry. I know you are. I believe you. But Emma, sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo the phone call, or the affair, or the year of you checking out emotionally before you checked out physically. Sorry is just words. What matters is what we do now. What do we do now? We grieve. We separate. We figure out who we are when we're not performing for each other anymore. And maybe, someday, when enough time has passed, we remember each other kindly, not as the people who destroyed each other, but as the people who tried and failed and learned something from the failing. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand like a child. "I really did love you," she said. "I know you don't believe me, but I did. I still do, in a way. Just not the right way. Not the way you deserved." "I know. And I loved you too. Past tense, present tense, in a different form. Whatever tense means when you're mourning something that isn't quite dead yet." We sat there for a while longer, two people who'd promised forever and delivered 7 years, sorting through the wreckage of good intentions and bad timing. "I should go," Emma finally said. "Yeah." She stood, gathered her coat. At the door, she turned back. "Thank you for this, for not making it as awful as it could have been." "Don't thank me yet. It's still going to be awful, just differently awful." She smiled sadly. "That's something, at least." After she left, I sat alone at our table finishing my coffee, watching rain streak down the windows. My phone buzzed. "Patricia, how did it go?" I typed back. "I'm not taking Richard's offer, but I'm not burning everything down either. Let's draft a counterproposal that's fair without being generous. She gets dignity, I get closure. Everyone gets to move on. You're sure?" I looked around the coffee shop at the place where it started, where I'd seen a girl crying over poetry and thought I could make her happy, where we'd been young and hopeful and stupid enough to believe love was enough. "Yeah, I'm sure." That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my father. He answered on the third ring, his voice rough from decades of smoking he'd quit but never quite recovered from. "Michael, this is a surprise." "Hi, Dad. You got a minute?" "For my son, who never calls?" "I've got several. I deserve that." We talk maybe twice a year, Christmas and his birthday. Pre-functor conversations about weather and work and nothing real. Emma and I are getting divorced. A long pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?" I told him. Not everything. Not the photographs or the private investigator or the trust fund complications. Just the essential truth. She had an affair, I found out. It's over. "Are you okay?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. Everyone keeps asking me that, and I don't know how to answer. Am I supposed to be okay?" "No. You're supposed to be whatever you are. Mac abused, angry, relieved, confused, all of it. None of it. There's no supposed to in this. You and Mom were married for 38 years. How did you do it? Luck, mostly. And your mother being infinitely patient with me." He coughed, that wet, rattling sound I hated. "But also, son, we chose each other every day. Even on the days we didn't like each other much, we kept choosing. Emma stopped choosing me. Then she's an idiot. But that's her loss, not your failure." Something in my chest, tight for days, loosened slightly. "Thanks, Dad. Come visit sometime. Not when you're in crisis, just because. I'm old and retired and bored, and I'd like to see my son more than twice a year." "I will. I promise." "Good. And Michael, whatever happens with this divorce, don't let it make you bitter. Bitter men die alone and angry. Your mother wouldn't want that for you." After we hung up, I sat in the dark of my living room and cried for the first time since Emma's phone call. Not dramatic, wrenching sobs, just quiet tears for everything lost and everything that would never be. I cried for the marriage, for the version of myself I'd been in it, For Emma and her impulsive heart and her inability to see consequences until they were crushing her. For the years we'd spent building something that turned out to have a structural flaw neither of us noticed until it collapsed. And when I was done, I felt lighter. Not happy, not healed, but lighter. Patricia called the next morning with news. Sullivan called. Emma told him about your conversation. He wants to negotiate in good faith. That was fast. She apparently fired him first, told him she wanted a different approach, then unfired him with specific instructions to work toward a fair settlement rather than scorched earth. Wow. Wow, indeed. Whatever you said to her, it worked. She's actually being reasonable. Don't sound so surprised. I've been doing this for 20 years. Reasonable divorcing spouses are unicorns. I'm professionally obligated to be skeptical. We hammered out the framework over the next week. The prenup's financial terms would stand. I kept the house, the business, the majority of liquid assets. Emma received the furniture she wanted, her car paid off, and enough settlement money to get an apartment and figure out her next steps. No spousal support. Clean break. The trust fund remained her problem to solve. It wasn't generous, but it wasn't cruel either. It was fair in the complicated way fairness works when you're dividing a life. By the end of October, we'd signed paper. By mid-November, the divorce was finalized. 7 years of marriage dissolved in 60 days of paperwork and negotiation. I stood in the courthouse hallway afterward, holding my copy of the decree, feeling strange and empty and free. Emma was there too, 20 feet away, talking to her sister. She looked over, caught my eye. We didn't wave, didn't smile, just acknowledged each other with a small nod. Two people who'd promised forever and delivered temporary parting ways with whatever grace we could manage. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. I drove home to my house, just mine now, officially, and started figuring out what came next. December arrived with the kind of cold that makes Portland natives complain and transplants laugh at our softness. I woke up on the first Saturday of the month to frost on my windows in silence so complete it felt physical. No Emma humming in the kitchen, no coffee brewing, no NPR voices discussing the week's political disasters. Just me in the house, in the question I'd been avoiding for weeks. Now what? The divorce was final. The papers signed, filed, processed through the bureaucratic machinery that turns married people into former spouses. Patricia had sent a final invoice with a note that said, "You're officially free. Try to enjoy it." The number at the bottom had made me worst, but I paid it without complaint. Some things are worth the cost. I got up, made coffee in the French press Emma always complained about, and stood at my kitchen window watching my neighbor Steve, retired postal worker, obsessed with his lawn, inspect his grass for frost damage with the intensity of a detective at a crime scene. My phone buzzed. "Jake, basketball tonight? Some of us from the office are playing at the rec center. Could use another body." I almost declined. I'd been declining most social invitations since September, telling myself I needed time to process, to heal, to figure things out. But looking at my empty Saturday stretching ahead, grading papers, maybe a movie, probably ordering takeout and eating it alone, I felt something shift. "What time?" I texted back. 7 p.m. Bring your A game. Actually, bring any game. We're all terrible. I'll be there. I spent the morning doing the mundane maintenance of life. Laundry, grocery shopping, changing the furnace filter. Tasks that felt simultaneously pointless and essential. In the cereal aisle, I stood for 5 minutes staring at the options before realizing I was looking for Emma's favorite brand out of habit. I bought something different, something I'd never tried just because I could. Small revolutions in the supermarket. At home, I opened my laptop intending to grade essays, but found myself instead looking at the document I'd started writing that night after meeting with the Patricia. The stream of consciousness dump of everything I couldn't say out loud. It had grown to 40 pages, part memoir, part therapy, part angry manifesto, part love letter to a marriage that never quite existed the way I'd imagined it. I read through it, surprised by my own words. Some of it was raw, unprocessed pain. Some of it was honest in ways I hadn't been able to be with Emma or Patricia or even myself. And some of it was actually good. Not polished, not ready for anything official, but good in the way true things are good, even when they're messy. I saved it, backed it up, filed it under Someday Maybe, and moved on to grading essays about The Great Gatsby. A student, Jennifer, always insightful, had written about Gatsby's inability to accept that the past was gone, that Daisy had moved on, that some things can't be recaptured no matter how hard you try. She concluded, Gatsby's tragedy isn't that he loved Daisy. It's that he loved his idea of their past more than he valued any possible future. I wrote in the margin, excellent insight. How do we distinguish between honoring our past and being imprisoned by it? Then I sat back staring at my own question. How do we distinguish between honoring the penis and being imprisoned by it? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Maybe that was okay. Basketball that night was exactly what Jake promised. Terrible. We were all in our 30s, office workers who exercised sporadically at best, playing with the enthusiasm of teenagers and the bodies of people who had discovered ibuprofen was a food group. I missed most of my shots, turned the ball over twice, and fouled out with 10 minutes left. It was glorious. Afterward, we grabbed beer at a dive bar nearby. Sticky floors, neon signs, the comforting anonymity of a place where nobody cared who you were or what you'd been through. You're smiling, Jake observed, sliding a pint across the table. Am I? First time in months. It's kind of freaking me out. Sorry to disturb you with my happiness. Not disturbed, relieved. I was starting to think you'd forgotten how. Marcus from accounting, a guy I'd barely spoken to before tonight, leaned forward. Jake mentioned you just got divorced. That sucks, man. How you holding it up? I waited for the familiar tightness in my chest, the defensive response, the need to minimize or redirect. It didn't come. I'm okay, actually. Some days better than others, but mostly okay. My parents divorced when I was in college. Marcus said it was brutal for a while. Then my dad started taking painting classes, and my mom joined a hiking group, and suddenly they were both happier than they'd been in years. Sometimes people are just better apart. That's what I'm banking on. You painting or hiking? Neither. Still figuring out the specifics. Well, you've got basketball now. That's a start. We drank beer and talked about nothing important. Sports, TV shows, someone's horrible Tinder date, the ongoing office debate about whether the coffee maker was haunted. Normal conversation, the kind I'd forgotten I missed. Walking to my car later, Jake fell into step beside me. You doing okay? Really? Yeah, I think I am. It's weird. I thought I'd feel more something, angry or devastated or whatever, but mostly I just feel quiet. Like I've been shouting for months and finally realized I could just stop. That's probably healthy or possibly concerning. I'm not a therapist. Nobody's asking you to be good because my advice would be terrible. Have you tried basketball? Doesn't solve most problems. Solve tonight's problem. Tonight's problem was that you were sitting home alone feeling sorry for yourself. Low bar. He was right, but I didn't mind. Low bars were still bars to clear. Sunday, I did something I hadn't done since before the divorce proceedings started. I went hiking. Mount Tabor. Easy trail, nothing ambitious, just me and the cold air and the view of the city from the top. The trail was busy with other Portlanders taking advantage of the rare December sunshine. Couples walking dogs, families with kids in puffy jackets, solo hikers like me finding whatever we were looking for in the rhythm of feet on dirt. At the summit, I sat on a bench and called my father. 2 calls in 2 months, and he answered. Should I be worried? No, I'm just following through on my promise, calling more than twice a year. I appreciate it. How are you? Good. Divorced, but good. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I'm starting to understand that. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing and everything. His retirement project, restoring a vintage car, my classes, the weather, politics. Easy conversation, the kind we'd never quite managed when I was younger, and angry at him for working too much, for not being present during Mom's illness, for all the things sons blame fathers for. I'm thinking about visiting, I said. Maybe over winter break if you're not busy. I'm retired in 71. I'm never busy. Come whenever you want. I'll book a ticket. After we hung up, I sat watching the city spread out below me. Bridges and buildings and neighborhoods where hundreds of thousands of people were living their complicated lives. Somewhere down there, Emma was figuring out her next chapter. Derek was probably already on to his next conquest. Richard was managing his daughter's trust fund drama. Patricia was billing someone else for divorce advice, and I was here on a mountain I'd climbed 100 times, seeing it fresh for the first time in years. Monday morning, I walked into my department chair's office during her open hours. Michael, Dr. Sarah Chen said, no relation despite sharing a last name. What can I do for you? I want to teach a new course, something I've been thinking about for a while. I'm listening. Literature of Transformation. Authors writing through and about major life changes. Divorce, death, illness, displacement. Diane, Canals, Guard, Strayed, Baldwin. The way narrative helps us metabolize experience, how stories teach us to survive our own lives. Sarah leaned back in her chair studying me. She was sharp, had been my advocate since I started teaching here, had written the recommendation letter that helped me get tenure-track status. This is personal, she said. Very good. The best courses always are. Write me a syllabus. We'll try it as an elective spring term. Really? Just like that? Michael, you're one of our best teachers. You've been coasting on autopilot for 2 years, and frankly, I was getting worried. Now you're in my office with fire in your eyes and an idea that matters to you. Yes, really. Just like that, I walked out feeling something I hadn't felt in years about teaching. Excitement, purpose, the sense that I had something to offer that went beyond just explaining the symbolism in the love song of J. Alfred Proof. That afternoon, I started drafting the syllabus, reading lists, discussion questions, assignment ideas. I worked through dinner, barely noticing when the sun set and my office grew dark around me. My phone buzzed around 9. Unknown number. Michael, it's Emma. Please don't hang up. I just wanted to say thank you. My dad told me you didn't fight the trust review, but you didn't help either. You did exactly what you said. Let me deal with my own consequences. I'm living in a small apartment now, working at a nonprofit, making my own way for the first time in my life. It's hard and scary, and I hate it sometimes. But I think I needed it. So thank you for being fair when you could have been cruel, for teaching me something I needed to learn even though I resented you for it. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I read the message 3 times, felt my emotions cycle through surprise, residual anger, something like sadness, and finally a kind of peaceful acceptance. I typed back, "You're welcome. I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care of yourself." I didn't add anything else, didn't ask how she was doing or invite further conversation. Just acknowledge her message and let it be complete. She responded with a simple heart emoji. Then nothing. I looked at that heart for a long time. Once upon a time, it would have meant something. Now, it was just punctuation. The end of a sentence we've been writing for 9 years. I deleted the thread. Not out of anger, not to erase her, just to make space. December continued its cold march toward the holidays. I bought a small Christmas tree. First time I'd done the decorating alone. Put on music Emma would have hated. drank bourbon she never let me keep in the house, hung ornaments however I wanted without negotiating aesthetic coherence. It looked terrible, mismatched and chaotic and deeply, perfectly mine. Jake came over for dinner one night. I'd started cooking again, finding unexpected joy in making food for someone who'd actually eat it. We grilled steaks, drank good wine, talked about the business and basketball and his terrible dating life. "You should get back out there," he said, gesturing with his wine glass. "Dating, meeting people. You're free now." "I'm not ready." "Nobody's ever ready. You just do it anyway," says the man who just told me about 3 disastrous hinge dates in 1 week. Exactly. I have wisdom born of suffering. I'll pass on that wisdom for now. Fair enough. But Michael, don't wait too long. Don't let the divorce become your identity. You're more than what happened to you. I thought about that after he left, about identity and narrative and how we tell ourselves stories about who we are. For months, I'd been the guy whose wife cheated on him, the guy getting divorced, the guy handling things so well everyone was slightly concerned. Who was I when those labels fell away? I still didn't entirely know, but I was starting to get curious about finding out. Christmas Eve, I drove to Seattle to spend it with my father. The drive up I-5 was familiar, hypnotic, giving me space to think. Dad met me at the door of his small house in Ballard, thinner than I remembered, grayer, but smiling genuinely. "You made it." I did. We spent the evening cooking together, his mother's recipe for pot roast, something I hadn't eaten since childhood. We drank scotch and watched old movies and didn't talk about the divorce or Mom's death or any of the heavy things that usually made our conversations stilted. "I'm proud of you," he said around midnight as we sat in his living room watching the fire he'd built in his rarely used fireplace. "For what? For surviving? For not letting the divorce make you bitter? For calling your old man more than twice a year? That's a low bar for pride. I've learned to appreciate low bars. Life's hard enough without setting impossible standards." We sat in comfortable silence. Outside, Seattle was quiet, muffled by the light snow that had started falling. Rare for the city, magical because of it. "Your mother would have liked who you've become," Dad said quietly. Not the divorce part, obviously, but the man handling it, the teacher, the guy who's figuring his life out with some grace. She'd have been proud, too. Something in me held tight for so long, released. "Thanks, Dad. Thank me by visiting more and maybe bringing that famous pot roast back into your cooking rotation. Deal." I drove back to Portland on Christmas afternoon through fading snow, my car warm, my mind quiet, my future uncertain but somehow less frightening than it had been. At home, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not the divorce memoir, something new. A story about a man rebuilding his life piece by piece, figuring out who he is when he's not performing for anyone. I didn't know where it was going, didn't know if it was any good, but it felt true. And true was enough. Outside my window, Portland sparkled with Christmas lights and rain and the promise of a new year coming fast. I was ready for it. Or ready enough, which was the same thing. January brought rain that felt less like weather and more like a state of being. Constant gray. The kind that makes you forget there was ever sun or will ever be sun again. I started the new semester with my Literature of Transformation course and 23 students who looked at the syllabus with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. "This class is about survival," I told them that first day, standing at the front of the lecture hall with coffee in hand and something like courage in my chest. Not the dramatic kind, not shipwrecks or natural disasters or apocalypses. The everyday kind. The kind where your life falls apart in ordinary ways and you have to figure out how to build something new from the wreckage. A student in the third row, Danny, I'd learned later, raised his hand. "Is this going to be depressing?" Probably sometimes, but also hopeful. The writers we're reading didn't just survive their transformations, They made art from them. They turned their pain into something that helps other people survive theirs. That's the goal. "What if we haven't been through anything transformative yet?" asked another student, younger, maybe 19. "Then you're lucky. And also, you will. Everyone does, eventually." Consider this class preparation. We started with Joan Diane's The Year of Magical Thinking. I assigned the first 3 chapters and asked them to write about a moment when reality refused to match their expectations. When the world revealed itself to be different than they'd believed, their essays destroyed me in the best way. One student wrote about her father's Alzheimer's diagnosis, another about coming out to religious parents, a third about losing his scholarship and having to leave college, another about her best friend's suicide. 23 students, 23 transformations in progress, 23 people learning that survival is an art form. I read their words late at night in my home office and felt less elated than I had in months. "You're different," Sarah Chen observed one afternoon in the faculty lounge. "Lighter, somehow." Lighter or just less weighed down? Is there a difference? Philosophically, probably. Practically, no idea. She poured coffee, settled into the chair across from me. "The new course is going well." "It's going. Students are engaged. I'm engaged. It feels like teaching again instead of just going through motions." "Good. We were worried about you last year. You were competent but checked out like you were teaching from muscle memory." I'd been checked out for a while before the divorce. I just didn't realize it. And now I'm checked in, which is scarier. Honestly, caring about things means they can hurt you. That's life, though. The alternative is just existing. I thought about that conversation driving home that evening, about the difference between existing and living, about how much of my marriage had been comfortable existence rather than actual life, how I'd mistaken routine for contentment, accommodation for love, the absence of conflict for peace. Emma had felt invisible, but so had I. We'd both been slowly disappearing into a life that looked good from the outside, but felt increasingly hollow from within. The difference was she'd had the courage or recklessness to blow it up. I'd just been passively waiting for something to change. February arrived with unexpected clarity, literal and metaphorical. The rain broke, the sun emerged, Portland remembered it was beautiful, and I got a text from an unfamiliar number that made my stomach drop. "Hey, Michael. Derek Morrison here. I know this is strange, but I'd like to talk to you. No agenda, no drama, just one human to another. Coffee sometime. I'm in Portland next week for business." I stared at my phone like it had grown teeth. Derek, Emma's affair partner. The real estate developer with the confident laugh and the complete disregard for other people's marriages. The catalyst for everything that had happened. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to respond with something cutting. My third was to call Patricia and ask if this was some kind of legal trap. Instead, I did something I didn't expect. I said yes. "Thursday, 3 p.m. Case study. Coffee. You're buying." His response? "Fair enough. See you there." I told exactly one person about the meeting, Jake. His response was immediate and emphatic. "Are you insane?" "Possibly. Probably." "Michael, this is the guy who slept with your wife. Why would you want to talk to him?" "I don't know. Curiosity? Closure? Maybe I want to see if he's actually as awful as I've imagined." "What if he's worse?" "Then I leave." "But Jake, I've spent months being angry at a person I've never met, at an idea of a person. Maybe I need to see the reality. This is either very mature or very stupid. Could be both." Thursday arrived with the kind of crisp winter sun that makes everything sharp-edged and clear. I got to case study early, ordered coffee, claimed a table in the back where we'd have privacy, but I'd still be visible to the staff just in case Derek turned out to be a psychopath or I turned out to be more volatile than I believed. He arrived exactly on time. I recognized him immediately from the private investigator's photos. Tall, fit, expensive suit under a designer coat. The kind of physical presence that takes up space without trying. He looked like money and confidence in someone who'd never been told no. He also looked nervous. Michael, he approached cautiously, hand extended. Thanks for agreeing to meet. I shook his hand, firm grip, eye contact, all the markers of someone used to business negotiations and power dynamics. Derek, sit down. Tell me why we're here. He sat, ordered coffee from a passing barista, took a moment to compose himself. I wanted to apologize. Whatever I'd been expecting, it wasn't that. Apologize? Yes. For, he gestured vaguely. For everything. For Emma, for the affair, for contributing to the destruction of your marriage, for being a colossal who didn't think about consequences beyond my own immediate gratification. I leaned back in my chair studying him, looking for signs of manipulation or performance, finding only what appeared to be genuine discomfort. Okay, you've apologized. Was that it? No, I also wanted to explain, not excuse. Explain. Because I've spent the past 4 months dealing with the fallout of my own choices, and I've learned some things about myself, about how I got to be the kind of person who has an affair with a married woman in Florida and doesn't think twice about it. I'm listening. He took a breath. I'm divorced twice. My first wife left me because I worked too much. My second wife left me because I cheated on her with multiple women. I have 2 kids I barely see because their mothers hate me, and the courts agreed I'm not stable enough for primary custody. I'm 42 years old, and I've built an empire and destroyed every meaningful relationship I've ever had. This sounds like a confession. Should I be taking notes? Sorry, I'm not good at this, at being honest about my therapist says I use confidence to mask insecurity and treat women like conquest to avoid real intimacy. She's probably right. You have a therapist now, court ordered Sean. Part of the custody negotiations. 3 sessions a week. It's expensive and uncomfortable, and I hate every minute of it. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Transformation through coercion. That's very American, right? He laughed short and bitter. Anyway, Emma, I met her at the hotel bar. She was drunk and crying and beautiful, and I was there for a conference and bored and looking for distraction. We started talking. She told me about feeling trapped in her marriage, invisible, desperate for someone to see her as a person instead of just a wife. And I saw an opportunity. Yes, God. Yes. I'm not proud of it, but that's exactly what I did. I told her what she wanted to hear, made her feel special and seen and desired. And then I took her back to my room and didn't think twice about the husband she'd mentioned or the marriage I was helping her destroy. I felt anger spike in my chest, hot and sharp, forced myself to breathe through it. Why are you telling me this? Because my therapist asked me a question I couldn't answer. She asked if I'd ever apologized to the people I'd hurt. Not the women I cheated on. I've apologized to my ex-wives for what that's worth. But the other people, the husbands, the families, the collateral damage of my selfish choices. And I realized I hadn't. I just moved on to the next thing, the next woman, the next distraction. Never looking back, never taking responsibility for the full scope of what I'd done. So, this is therapy homework, partially, but also, he met my eyes directly. I've been thinking about you, about the guy whose life I helped blow up. Emma told me you're a teacher, that you're kind and steady and you loved her completely, that she spent 7 years with someone who treated her well and she threw it away for a weekend with me. And I kept thinking, what kind of person does that make me? What kind of person looks at someone else's good marriage and decides to help destroy it for a few nights of fun? She told you it was a good marriage. She did. Even drunk, even angry, even rationalizing her choices, she said, you were a good man, that you deserve better. And then she did it anyway. And I helped. We sat in silence around us. The coffee shop hummed with normal afternoon energy. Students studying, people on laptops, life continuing in its ordinary way, while two men dissected the anatomy of betrayal. What do you want from me, Derek? Forgiveness? Absolution? Permission to feel less shitty about yourself? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I just needed you to be real. Not just an abstract concept of the husband, but an actual person I wronged. Maybe that's selfish too. Maybe I'm here for me more than you. I don't know. I'm still figuring out how to be honest about my motivations. I took a long drink of coffee, let my thoughts settle. You want honesty? Here's mine. I spent months being furious at you. Months imagining you as this villain who seduced my wife and destroyed my life. And you know what? You're not a villain. You're just a person. Luffs up choices and leaving damage in your wake, which is somehow more depressing than if you were actually evil. I know, but Derek, Emma's choices were hers. You didn't seduce her against her will. You didn't force her into anything. She was a grown woman who decided what she wanted and took it. You were the opportunity. She was the person who chose to take it. That's generous. It's not generous. It's accurate. I spent too long blaming everyone but Emma for what happened. You, Derek, the circumstances, myself. But the truth is simpler. She made a choice. She chose you over me. Over us, and that's on her. She regrets it. You know, she told me that when she ended things, said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Good. She should regret it. Regret is how we learn not to repeat our mistakes, or at least how we're supposed to. Derek finished his coffee, set the cup down carefully. For what it's worth, I ended things with her, not just because my lawyer advised it. I ended them because she talked about you constantly, about how you were handling the divorce, what you were doing, whether you'd ever forgive her. Every conversation circled back to you, and I realized she wasn't with me because she wanted me. She was with me because she was running from herself. And I've been that person before. The escape plan, the distraction, it never ends well. Surprisingly self-aware for someone who just spent 10 minutes telling me how terrible you are at self-awareness. Therapy is expensive. I'm trying to get my money's worth. I laughed. Actual laughter. The absurdity of sitting in a coffee shop with my ex-wife's affair partner, having a reasonable conversation about responsibility and regret and the messy humanity of everyone involved. Are we done, Bose? I asked. Have you gotten what you needed from this? I think so. Have you? I considered the question, looked at Derek. Not the villain I'd constructed, not the symbol of everything wrong. Just a man struggling with his own demons and probably failing more often than succeeding. Yeah, I said. I think I have. You're just a person, flawed and messy and trying, however inadequately, to be better. That's weirdly disappointing and also kind of a relief. Sorry to disappoint with my mundane humanity. We're all mundanely human. That's the tragedy and the comedy of it. We stood, shook hands again. This time it felt different. Not friendly, exactly, but human. Honest. Good luck with your therapy, I said. Good luck with your life after Emma. I don't need luck. I've got something better.
What's that?
curiosity about what comes next. He smiled. That's good. Hold on to that. I watched him leave, then sat back down and ordered another coffee, pulled out my phone and texted Jake. I just had coffee with Derek, and he's just a person, not a villain, not a monster. Just a up person like the rest of us. Are you okay? Yeah, I really am. That evening, I worked on my book, the memoir essay thing I'd been writing in fragments since September. I wrote about the coffee shop meeting, about the strange grace of seeing your enemy as human, about how anger loses its power when you realize the person you're angry at is suffering too, just in different ways. I wrote until my hands ached and my eyes burned and the sky outside turned from dusk to full dark. And for the first time since Emma's phone call in September, I felt something that wasn't grief or anger or strategic calculation. I felt free. Not healed. That would take longer. Not whole. There were still broken pieces to address. A weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. February continued its surprising clarity. The sun stayed, the rain held off. Portland sparkled with unexpected warmth, and I kept moving forward, one day at a time, building a life that was messier and smaller and more honestly mine than anything I'd had before. March came in like a whisper. Soft rain, tentative blossoms on the cherry trees lining my street. That particular quality of light that makes Portland feel like it's emerging from hibernation. I woke up on the first Saturday of the month and realized I'd slept through the night without waking once. First time since September. Small victories. My literature of transformation class had hit its stride. We'd moved from Didion to Cheryl Strayed's Wild, and my students were writing essays about the physical journeys they'd taken or wanted to take. Reading them, I kept thinking about movement, literal and metaphorical. How sometimes you have to walk away from something to understand what it meant. One student, Maya, wrote about hiking the Pacific Crest Trail after her mother's death. She described reaching a vista point somewhere in Northern California and realizing she'd spent 3 weeks thinking about her feet, her pack, the next mile. And in all that physical focus, her grief had transformed from an acute wound into something she could carry. I wrote in the margin, "This is what Strayed means by the work of healing." It's not passive, it's not waiting. It's the deliberate act of moving forward even when you're not sure where you're going. Then I sat back and realized I was writing to myself as much as to her. Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jake holding a toolbox and grinning. "What's this?" "This is me helping you fix your back fence. I noticed last week it's falling apart." "I didn't ask you to help with my fence." "I know. That's what makes it friendship instead of hired labor." "You coming, or are you going to make me do manual labor alone like some kind of barbarian?" We spent 3 hours in my backyard replacing rotted boards and sinking new posts. It was cold and muddy, and my hands got splinters, and it was exactly what I needed. Physical work, simple problems with straightforward solutions. The satisfaction of fixing something broken. "You know what this is?" Jake said, hammering in a nail with more force than strictly necessary. "A fence. A metaphor. You're literally rebuilding boundaries. That's the worst metaphor I've ever heard. Doesn't make it less true." He stood back, examined his work. "But seriously, how are you doing? And don't give me the standard 'I'm fine' line." I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm okay. Actually, okay. Like, some days are hard, and I miss being married. Not to Emma specifically, but miss having a partner, someone to share things with. But other days, I wake up and make coffee exactly how I want it, and eat breakfast at whatever time feels right. And there's this freedom in it that I didn't expect. Is that terrible to be relieved that my marriage ended? It's honest. Honest isn't terrible. Emma texted me last week, said she's been doing therapy, working through why she made the choices she made. She didn't ask for anything, didn't want to talk, just informed me, like a status update. How'd that feel? Weird. Good for her, I guess. I don't know. I'm at this point where I want her to be okay, but I don't want to be involved in her being okay. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. That's what healthy boundaries look like. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of hammering and measuring filling the space where conversation might have been. I've been thinking about dating, I said eventually. Jake stopped mid-swing. Really? Thinking about it? Not doing it yet, but thinking about what it would mean to meet someone new, to start over with all this baggage and history, to trust someone again. That's progress. Or terror disguised as progress. Also possible. The fence completed. We stood back and admired our work. It was sturdy and straight and unquestionably mine. Not part of the marital property, not something shared or negotiated, just a fence I'd fixed with my friend on a Sunday afternoon. Thanks for this, I said. For the fence? For the fence? For basketball? For showing up even when I was company? For being the kind of friend who brings a toolbox without being asked? That's what partners do, business and otherwise. Monday morning brought an email that shifted something in my trajectory. The subject line read, "Writing opportunity." The sender was someone named Patricia Okoye, editor at a small press in Seattle I'd never heard of. Professor Chen, I came across an essay you published in an academic journal 3 years ago about narrative truth in American literature. Your writing stayed with me. Clear, honest, accessible without being simplistic. I'm reaching out because we're putting together an anthology of creative nonfiction about transformation and resilience. Based on that essay and some research into your recent work, I think you might have something to contribute. Would you be interested in submitting a piece? We're looking for 3,000 to 5,000 words, personal narrative preferred. Payment is modest, but we have good distribution. Let me know if this interests you. Best, Patricia. I read it twice. Then I opened the document. I'd been working on my divorce memoir, my transformation narrative, the 40,000-word exploration of how my life had come apart and what I was building from the pieces. I'd never intended to publish it. It was too raw, too personal, too unfiltered. But reading Patricia's email, I thought about my students writing their transformations, about Maya hiking the PCT, about the freedom that comes from turning private pain into public testimony. I spent the next week extracting a chapter from the larger manuscript, editing it down to 4,200 words, making it cohesive as a standalone piece. I titled it "The Phone Call That Changed Everything," and sent it to Patricia before I could overthink it. Her response came 3 days later. "This is excellent and exactly what we're looking for. Welcome to the anthology." That evening, I called my father. "I'm going to be published." And I told him, "Your academic work?" "No, personal essay about the divorce." A pause. "How do you feel about that?" Terrified, excited, exposed, all of it. "Your mother used to say the best writing makes you feel vulnerable, that if you're not a little scared to share it, you're not being honest enough." She was right. She usually was. "I'm proud of you, son, for getting divorced and writing about it, for surviving it with enough grace to turn it into art. That's harder than it sounds." We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. His car restoration project, my class, the Mariners' upcoming season, the comfortable conversation of people learning to be family again after years of polite distance. April arrived with real warmth. The cherry blossoms exploded in pink and white, covering sidewalks and petals like snow. My students turned in their final projects, personal narratives of transformation. Each one a small window into someone's private struggle to become themselves. I read them all in one sitting, crying over at least half of them. 23 people, 23 stories of survival and resilience and the messy work of healing. On the last day of class, I told them, "You all came in here thinking this was about literature, about reading dead authors and analyzing their techniques. But the real assignment was this: to recognize that your life is a text too, that what you're living through matters, that your story of transformation is just as valid as Didion's or Strade's or anyone else's. Don't forget that. Don't diminish your own experience because it feels small or ordinary. All transformation is extraordinary." They applauded. A few lingered after to thank me, to tell me the class had meant something, had helped them process things they'd been carrying alone. Maya, the PCT student, stopped at my desk. "Professor Chen, I wanted you to know this class kind of saved me. I've been stuck since my mom died, just going through motions. But reading these books, writing about my hike, talking about transformation like it's a skill we can learn, it gave me permission to start moving forward again." "You saved yourself," I told her. "I just gave you some books and a deadline." "Maybe, but sometimes that's enough." After she left, I sat alone in the empty classroom thinking about saving and being saved, about how much of healing is just showing up and doing the work even when you don't feel ready. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Hello, Michael Chen." A woman's voice, professional but warm, speaking. "My name is Diane Foster. I'm a literary agent in New York. Patricia Akoy sent me your essay from the anthology. I read it this morning. Do you have time to talk?" My heart started doing something complicated in my chest. "Sure. Yes. What about expanding it into a book? I think you have a full-length memoir here. The way you write about divorce, about accountability and transformation without bitterness, it's rare. People need this perspective. Would you be interested in working on a book proposal?" I walked to my office window, looked out at campus, greening with spring, students sprawled on the quad with textbooks and frisbees, and the careless optimism of people who haven't had their worlds fall apart yet. "Yes," I said. "I'd be interested." "Excellent. I'll send you some materials. We'll set up a call next week to discuss vision, timeline, all of that. But Michael, this could be something significant. Your voice, it's exactly what the conversation about divorce needs." After we hung up, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, looked at the 40,000 words I'd written over the past 7 months. I'd started writing it as therapy, as a way to process the phone call and the betrayal and the strange, cold calculation of protecting myself. I'd written it for me, never imagining anyone else would read it. Now it might become a book, a real book. My private transformation made public. The thought terrified me. It also felt exactly right. I texted Jake. "Remember how I said I was figuring out what comes next? I think I just figured out part of it." His response? "Tell me everything." That evening, I sat in my backyard by the fence we'd fixed, drinking bourbon and watching the sky fade from blue to purple to black. The city sounds washed over me. Distant traffic, a dog barking, someone's music playing faintly. 8 months ago, Emma had called from Florida and blown up my life. 8 months ago, I'd said, "Okay," and started the cold work of protecting myself. 8 months ago, I'd become someone I didn't entirely recognize. Strategic, calculating, ruthless in self-defense. Now I was sitting in my yard drinking bourbon, about to write a book about transformation, teaching classes about survival, learning to be a person again instead of just a wounded husband. The man I'd been in September, the one who accommodated and adapted and slowly disappeared, was gone. The man I'd become in the immediate aftermath, cold and defensive and armored, was fading too. Who I was now, sitting in the spring darkness with possibility opening up around me, was something new, something still forming, something I couldn't quite name yet, but recognized as mine. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Emma, from a new phone. I heard about your book from your dad. He mentioned it to my dad. I'm happy for you. You deserve good things. I hope the book helps other people the way this whole experience has strangely helped me. Take care. I looked at the message for a long time, felt the complicated swirl of emotions, residual anger, distant affection, mostly just a kind of peaceful acceptance. I wrote back, "Thank you. I hope you're well. I hope you're finding what you need." Then I added, "I forgive you. Not for you, for me, so I can stop carrying it." Her response was immediate. "Thank you. That means more than you know." I didn't respond again, just set my phone down and finished my bourbon and listened to the night sounds of the city I was learning to love again. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about Emma, wasn't about Derek or the trust fund or any of it. It was about me choosing to put down the weight, not forgetting, not excusing, just releasing. Spring deepened into summer. I wrote my book proposal, started dating casually, nothing serious, just coffee and conversations and remembering how to be a person someone might want to know. And every day I became a little more myself, whoever that was. June brought Portland's brief, glorious summer, the golden weeks between rain and smoke season, when the city remembers why people tolerate 9 months of gray. I sat on my back porch at 7 a.m., coffee in hand, laptop open, writing the proposal that might become a book. Diane had sent detailed guidelines, 3 sample chapters, a full outline, a marketing analysis, my author platform, the business of turning private pain into public narrative. I'd spent 2 weeks working on it, refining, questioning whether I wanted this level of exposure. The answer kept coming back, yes. Not because I wanted attention or sympathy, because Maya had been right. Sometimes people need permission to start moving forward, and if my story could be that permission for someone else, then the vulnerability was worth it. My phone rang. Patricia Goldsmith, my lawyer turned unexpected friend. "Michael, how's the writing going?" Slowly. "How's the divorcing people business?" Lucrative and depressing as always. "Listen, I'm calling because I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening." "I'm teaching a continuing education seminar at Lewis Wisson Clark this fall, the human side of divorce practice. Teaching lawyers how to not be complete to their clients during the worst moments of their lives. I want you to come speak." "Me? I'm not a lawyer." "Exactly. You're the client perspective. The person who went through it with remarkable grace despite having every reason to go nuclear. I want you to talk about what helped, what didn't, how lawyers can do better." I thought about the past 9 months, the strategic decisions, the moments of almost cruelty, the choice to be fair when I could have been vindictive. What would I even say? Tell the truth? Tell them what it felt like from your side? Tell them how the process could be more human? These lawyers need to hear it from someone who lived it, not from me lecturing about empathy. "I'll do it." "When?" "September. I'll send details." "And Michael, thank you. This matters." After we hung up, I added a note to my book proposal under Platform. Invited speaker on divorce and transformation. Small credential, but legitimate. The proposal was due Friday. Wednesday afternoon. I sent it to Diane with a note. "This is either the bravest or stupidest thing I've done. Possibly both." Her response came Thursday morning. "This is excellent. Sending it out to publishers next week. Prepare yourself for rejection and possibility in equal measure." I spent Thursday evening at a coffee shop with someone named Rachel, 34, architect, recently separated. Met through a friend of Jake's who thought we might have things in common. We did. Failed marriages, cautious optimism about the future, a shared appreciation for overly complicated coffee drinks. How long have you been divorced? She asked. Finalized in November, you separated 6 months. Not final yet. He keeps delaying the paperwork because he's hoping I'll change my mind. She stirred her latte absently. I won't, but he doesn't believe me yet. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? Nothing dramatic, no affairs, no abuse. Just we became roommates who occasionally had obligatory sex. I was 34 and realizing I'd spent a decade disappearing into someone else's life. So I stopped. That takes courage, or selfishness, depending on who you ask. My mother thinks I'm throwing away a good man because I'm having a midlife crisis. Are you? Maybe. But if wanting to feel alive in my own life is a crisis, then I guess I'm having one. She smiled, sad but genuine. What about you? What ended your marriage? I gave her the abbreviated version. The phone call, the affair, the cold, pragmatic response, the divorce. Like, wow, she said, you handled that better than most people would have. I don't know about better. Differently. Maybe I did what I needed to survive it. That's what we're all doing, right? Just trying to survive our own lives with whatever grace we can manage. We talked for 2 hours about architecture and teaching, about rebuilding after loss, about the strange vulnerability of dating when you're older and damaged and trying to be honest about both. At the end, she hugged me and said, let's do this again as friends or whatever. I'm not ready for anything serious and I suspect you're not either. Friends sounds good. Good. I could use more friends who understand that sometimes survival is the victory. Friday, I submitted final grades for my spring courses, cleaned out my office for summer, felt the particular emptiness that comes at the end of a semester. Relief mixed with mild loss, the rhythm disrupted. Walking to my car, I ran into Sarah Chen. Michael, perfect timing. I wanted to talk to you about fall. The transformation course is scheduled, right? It is, but I'm also thinking about your broader trajectory. You're up for promotion review next year, associate to full professor. I want to make sure you're positioning yourself well. I appreciate that, though. I'm not sure writing a divorce memoir helps my academic credentials. Actually, it might. Depends on how you frame it. Public scholarship, accessible writing, reaching audiences beyond academia, that all matters now, especially if you're teaching courses that bridge personal experience and literature. I hadn't thought about it that way. Start thinking about it. You're doing interesting work. Don't under-retell it just because it's personal. That evening, I worked on the book's outline, expanding the structure Diane had requested. The narrative would move chronologically, but also thematically, each chapter examining a different aspect of transformation. The trail, self-protection, accountability, mercy, forgiveness, rebuilding. The final chapter, still unwritten, would be about whatever came next, about life after the crisis, after the survival, after the immediate healing, about becoming someone new instead of just recovering who you were. I didn't know what that chapter looked like yet. I was still living it. Sunday morning, my doorbell rang early. I opened it to find a delivery person with a large flat package. Michael Chen, that's me. Sign here. I brought the package inside, curious and confused. The return address was Santa Fe, New Mexico. I didn't know anyone in Santa Fe. Inside was a painting, abstract, and the bold colors predominantly blues and golds with slashes of deep red. Chaos organizing itself into something almost coherent. Attached was a note in handwriting I recognized. Michael, I'm in Santa Fe now. Took a job at a non-profit art gallery, living in a tiny apartment, making very little money, learning to be a person who earns her own way. It's hard and terrifying, and the best thing I've ever done. I've been painting again, something I gave up in college because my father said it wasn't practical. But my therapist suggested I need creative outlets for processing everything. So, I paint. This one is for you. It's called The Phone Call. It's what that night in Florida looked like from inside my head. beautiful and destructive and completely chaotic. I'm not asking for forgiveness or contact, just wanted you to have it. A piece of what happened transformed into something else. I heard about your book deal. I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserve to tell your story. I hope it helps people. Take care of yourself. Emma, I hung the painting in my home office, not out of sentimentality or forgiveness or anything complicated, but because it was good. Because it captured something true about that night. The chaos, the beauty, the destruction. Because transformation meant holding space for complicated feelings about complicated people. Jake came over for dinner that night. I'd started cooking regularly, finding unexpected joy in it. We grilled salmon, made salad, opened good wine. Emma sent me a painting, I told him. Is that weird? Very, but also kind of okay. She's in Santa Fe, apparently, working at an art gallery, painting again. How do you feel about that? Genuinely happy for her. I spent so much energy being angry, then being strategic, then just trying to survive. Now I mostly hope she figures her life out from the distance without involving me. That's healthy. Or emotionally repressed. Could be both. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from friendship deep enough that constant conversation isn't required. I've been seeing someone, Jake said eventually. Her name's Sophie. She's a developer at a tech company. Smart, funny, doesn't take my... That's great, man. Why are you telling me like it's a confession? Because you're going through all this transformation and healing, and I didn't want to rub my functioning relationship in your face. Jake, I'm divorced, not dead. I'm happy you met someone. Tell me about her. He did. His face lit up in that way that happens when you're falling and don't mind. I felt genuine happiness for him, unmarred by envy or bitterness. Progress. Monday morning, Diane called. I have news. 3 publishers want to see the full manuscript. My stomach dropped. Seriously? Seriously? One's a major house. 2 are mid-sized but well-respected. They all love the proposal. They all think there's an audience for through of this. Michael, this is happening. I haven't written the full manuscript yet. Then you'd better start. I need it in 6 months. Can you do that? I looked at my calendar. June through December, summer and fall. 6 months to write a book about the past 9 months of my life. Yes, I said I can do that. Good, because I think this could be significant. Your voice, honest without being bitter, accountable without being self-flagellating. It's what people need to hear. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, feeling the weight of commitment. I'd said yes to something public and permanent. No taking it back now. I opened my laptop and started writing chapter 1. The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The words came easier than I expected. Months of notes and fragments and late-night processing had prepared me. I wrote for 6 hours straight, barely stopping, losing myself in the narrative of that night. The phone call, the shock, the cold clarity that descended. By evening, I had 15 pages, raw, unedited, but real. I texted my father. I'm writing a book about the divorce. His response. Your mother would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Thanks, Dad. When can I read it? When it's less terrible. Looking forward to it. Love you, son. Love you too. I made dinner, poured bourbon, sat on my porch watching the long summer light fade. Neighbors walked dogs, someone was having a barbecue. Laughter and music drifting through the warm air. Normal life happening all around me while I documented the abnormal. My phone buzzed. Rachel, hey, want to grab coffee this week? I promised to be less depressing than last time. You weren't depressing. You were honest. Wednesday afternoon. Perfect. See you then. I put my phone down and looked at my backyard. The fence Jake and I had fixed. The garden I'd started in May. The space slowly becoming mine instead of ours. 9 months ago, Emma had called from Florida and destroyed the life we built. Now I was sitting in the ruins of that life, and they didn't look like ruins anymore. They looked like foundation, raw material for something new. The book would be my testimony, my witness statement. Not to condemn Emma or celebrate my survival, but to map the territory between betrayal and healing for anyone else who might need the directions. That felt like purpose, like meaning emerging from meaninglessness. I went inside, poured more bourbon, opened my laptop, and kept writing. The story wanted to be told. I was finally ready to tell it. August arrived with wildfire smoke that turned the sun orange and the air thick enough to taste. I wrote through it, windows closed, air purifier running, the manuscript growing in daily increments. 100 pages, then 150, then 200. Diane had been right. The story wanted to be told, but writing it meant reliving it, examining each moment with unflinching honesty. The phone call, the investigation, the cold, strategic decisions, the moment I chose fairness over revenge. Each chapter required me to sit with the version of myself I'd been at that moment and ask, why did you do that? What were you afraid of? What were you becoming? The answers weren't always comfortable. My morning routine had settled into a rhythm. Wake at 6, coffee, 2 hours of writing before the day's obligations intruded. I'd written 60,000 words by mid-August. Diane wanted 90,000. I'd make it. Rachel and I had developed an easy friendship. Coffee once a week, occasionally dinner, long conversations about divorce and rebuilding, and the strange liminal space between who you were and who you're becoming. She'd finalized her divorce in July, cried on my couch for an hour afterward, not from regret, but from the finality of it. It's done, she'd said. 10 years legally over just like that. How does it feel? Like relief and grief having a fist fight in my chest. Both winning, both losing. I understood completely. Mid-August, I drove to Seattle for a meeting with a potential publisher, Cascade Press, one of the 3 interested houses. Their editor, James Whitmore, was a legend in the memoir world, known for working with authors on raw, transformative stories. We met at a restaurant near Pike Place Market upstairs, where the tourist didn't venture. James was younger than I expected, maybe 45, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who missed nothing. Michael, thanks for making the drive. Thanks for the interest. We ordered, made small talk about traffic and smoke and the Mariners' continuing tradition of breaking hearts. Then James leaned forward, his expression serious. I want to publish your book, but I need to know your for what comes with it. What do you mean? Memoir is exposure. People will know your story. They'll have opinions about your choices, Emma's choices, how you handled everything. You'll get emails from strangers telling you you're either a saint or an idiot. Your personal life becomes public property. Are you ready for that? I thought about it. About the students in my transformation class sharing their stories. About Maya hiking the PCT. About the vulnerability required to help others by being honest about your own struggles? Yes, I said. I'm ready because the alternative is keeping it private and safe, and I don't think that serves anyone, least of all me. James smiled. That's the right answer. Wrong answer would have been, I don't care what people think. Everyone cares, but you've thought through the pen and decided it's worth it. That's maturity. Or trauma making me weirdly comfortable with it. Vulnerability. Could be both. We spent 2 hours discussing editorial vision, timeline, marketing strategy. James wanted the book out by next August, almost exactly 2 years after the phone call. The symmetry felt right. One more thing, James said as we finished dessert. The ending. How does it resolve? I'm still writing it, still living it. That's honest, but Michael, readers will want some sense of closure. Not necessarily a happy ending, but a sense that you've arrived somewhere, that the transformation is complete enough to reflect on. What if it's not complete? What if I'm still in the middle of becoming whoever I'm becoming? Then you write that. Write the truth of being in the middle. That's more honest than pretending you've figured everything out. Driving back to Portland through smoke-hazed I-5, I thought about endings, about closure, about the difference between resolution and stasis. My phone rang as I crossed the Columbia River. Emma's father, Richard. "Michael, do you have a minute?" "Sure. What's going on?" "Emma's doing well. Really well, actually. Her therapist thinks she's made significant progress. The trust administrators are willing to reconsider her status." "That's good. I'm glad." "They want a statement from you about whether you believe the infidelity was an isolated incident or a pattern of behavior. It would carry weight. The thing I'd refused to do 9 months ago, the mercy Richard had asked for back then." "Richard, I appreciate you calling, but my answer is the same. What happened with the trust isn't my business anymore. That's between Emma and the administrators and you. Even now, even with everything that's happened, especially now, Emma's doing the work on her own. She's building a life that's hers. If I intervene, even to help, I'm taking that away from her, Bron. She needs to earn her way back, not have me rescue her." A long pause. "You're a harder man than I gave you credit for." "I'm not hard. I'm just done being the person who fixes things for people who need to fix themselves." "Fair enough. I respect that, even if I don't like it. How's she really doing?" "Honestly, she's different. Humbler, more grounded. The work at the gallery pays nothing, but she loves it. She's painting. She's in therapy 3 times a week. She talks about you sometimes, not with bitterness, but with what seems like genuine understanding of what she did. I think losing everything forced her to become someone real. That's all I wanted. Not her suffering, just her understanding. She understands, Michael. Maybe too late, but she understands." After we hung up, I sat in my driveway watching smoke-filtered sunlight paint everything sepia tone. Emma was finding herself in Santa Fe. I was finding myself in Portland. We were both better apart than we'd ever been together. That was its own kind of closure. September brought cooler air and the start of fall semester. My Literature of Transformation course had a waiting list. Word had spread from last year's students. I had 30 people enrolled, every seat filled. The energy in the room electric with anticipation. First day I told them, "This class isn't about literature. It's about you. The books are just maps for territory you'll have to cross yourself. Some of you are in the middle of your transformations right now. Some of you haven't encountered yours yet. All of you will leave here with tools for surviving whatever life throws at you." A student in the back, older, maybe 40, raised her hand. "What if we don't want to transform? What if we just want to survive?" Survival is transformation. You don't go through hard things and come out the same. You either transform or you get stuck. This class is about transforming with intention instead of just letting life happen to you. We started with Didion again, the year of magical thinking, the anatomy of grief and denial, and the slow, painful acceptance of reality. Their first assignment, write about a moment when reality insisted on being seen, when you could no longer maintain the comfortable fiction you had been living in. I wrote the assignment alongside them, wrote about the phone call, about hearing Emma laugh with Derek in the background, about the moment I understood our marriage had been a comfortable fiction for longer than I'd admitted. Reading my students' essays 2 weeks later, I found 30 different versions of that same moment. The moment the lie becomes impossible. The moment transformation begins, whether you're ready or not. One student wrote about her father coming out as gay after 30 years of marriage. Another about losing his scholarship and having to tell his immigrant parents he was dropping out. Another about the morning she woke up and knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't be a doctor like her family expected, that she'd been performing someone else's life. I wrote to each of them, "This is brave. This is the work. Keep going." Late September, I spoke at Patricia's seminar for divorce lawyers, stood in front of 50 attorneys and told them what it felt like from the client side. "You're navigating the worst moment of our lives." I said, "We're in crisis. We're making decisions about our futures while our emotions are completely compromised. What we need from you isn't just legal strategy. We need humanity. We need you to remember we're people, not cases, not billable hours, not tactical problems to solve." I talked about what Patricia had done right, being honest without being cruel, strategic without being cold, giving me agency while guiding me away from my worst impulses. "The divorce industry profits from our pain," I said. "Every month of additional litigation is money for you and devastation for us. The lawyers who can resolve things quickly and fairly, who can help clients move forward instead of staying locked in combat, those are the ones doing the real work." During the Q&A, a lawyer asked, "But what about clients who want blood, who want to destroy their ex-spouse?" Your job is to talk them down, to explain that vengeance is expensive and empty, to help them see that the best revenge is moving on and building a better life. I wanted to destroy Emma at first. Patricia helped me understand that was just pain knocking, that what I actually wanted was protection and closure. Most clients don't know what they actually need. That's where you come in. Afterward, several lawyers thanked me. One woman, maybe 60, with kind eyes, said, "I've been doing this for 30 years. I needed to hear that. I needed to be reminded why I started. To help people, not just win cases." October brought rain and falling leaves in the first draft of my manuscript. 92,000 words. The full story from phone call to present day, minus the final chapter. I was still living. I sent it to Diane with a note. "This is either good or I've been staring at it too long to tell. Please be gentle." Her response came a week later. "This is better than good. James will love it. Sending it to him today." James's editorial letter arrived in early November. 15 pages of thoughtful notes, questions, suggestions. He wanted more reflection, less play-by-play. Wanted me to dig deeper into the moments of choice. Wanted the final chapter to address where I was now, even if I didn't have all the answers. "The reader needs to see that you're okay," he wrote. "Not healed completely, not perfectly whole, but okay, functioning, building. That's the hope they're looking for." I spent November revising, deepening, making it less about what happened and more about what it meant, what I learned, who I became. The final chapter came last. I wrote it on Thanksgiving morning alone in my house, coffee and silence. And the question James had asked, "Where are you now?" I wrote about teaching, about students learning to tell their own transformation stories, about Rachel and Jake and my father and the slow reconstruction of community, about Emma's painting hanging in my office, a reminder that people are complicated and transformation is never clean. I wrote about forgiveness. Not the Hollywood kind where everyone hugs and reconciles, but the quiet kind, where you stop carrying what isn't yours to carry. I wrote about dating occasionally, cautiously, without expectation, about learning to be alone without being lonely, about the difference between healing and moving on. And I wrote about the phone call, about how it destroyed my marriage but saved my life, about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the catalyst for becoming who you were meant to be. "I'm not grateful for Emma's betrayal," I wrote, "but I'm grateful for who I became in response to it. I'm grateful for the choices I made, the mercy and the boundaries, the accountability and the grace. I'm grateful that I learned the difference between being soft and being weak, between being hard and being cruel. I'm okay. Not perfect, not fully healed, but okay. Building a life that's honestly mine instead of one I inherited or defaulted into. Teaching students to do the same. Writing this book as a map for anyone else navigating the territory between betrayal and wholeness.
The phone call changed everything. I simply answered, "Okay." What I did after that, the cold strategy and eventual grace, the protection and release that changed me. And maybe that was always the point. I sent the revised manuscript to James December 1st. His response? "This is it. This is the book." Publication date, August 15th, 2 years after the call. Let's tell this story.